Welcome back, everyone, to the Canadian Contenders League. My name is Fel, also joined here today by Binks for the first best of 3 of the day. Binks, how you doing today, man?
Man, I have a smile on my face. I've had so many great things that happened today. It's just those little things that have just accumulated. And with this matchup today, I think it's just going to be another thing to put a smile on my face.
Yeah, I gotta agree, man. Well, since we have a pretty good amount of time to kill, let's go take a look at the two teams, actually, that are playing today for this first best of 3. It's Achieve versus SYR Esports, and we've got their rosters up, so quickly we go take a look at all 10 players that will be here tonight. We've got Badger, Dunny, Gingy, Mellow, and Stu's World on the side of Achieve, and then followed up for SYR, we've got Naj, HPR, Swifted, Vazdex, and Rapid here for the opposing team.
Yeah, both these rosters really looking to make a name, as this is the first regular season, I guess we could call this, for CCL. But we also have to wonder what maps we are going to be going to. So I can read those off really quickly, or I could quickly just tell you guys, which would be a lot easier. We're going to Cafe, Villa, and then our decider is going to be Clubhouse if we need it. On each map, we're going to have Achieved attacking first on the side of Cafe, then Villa and Club. We're going to see SYR starting on the attacking side. So a good chance for both these teams to really show off what they can do.
Yeah, and unfortunately for at least Achieve, I have a bit more information about them. They weren't able to make it all the way to the SCS finals, funnily enough, but they've been kind of in the works for T3 for quite some time. So, like you mentioned, Binks, both these teams, especially Achieved, are really here to make a name for themselves. So I think it'll be, despite the map picks, I think it'll still be a very exciting best of 3 to say the least.
You definitely have a point there. Now going over to Cafe, you do have a point. Like going over Cafe, I want a hot take on Cafe, especially with the newer metas we've been seeing. We've seen it change up, and we still call it New Belt, but it feels really old at this point.
Yeah, the rework happened such a long time ago. I don't know if we could really call it that at this point, but in terms of the meta, it has actually been changing up just slightly. We're seeing less and less Goyo because it doesn't really have shields anymore, so you don't really have that to use for util burn. Instead, we have a lot more Castle in the meta, which has always been fun. He's still used to cut out a lot of significant choke points and a lot of really high target angles, so that's what you get to see a lot nowadays here for Cafe, but besides that, everything is still kind of the same. A lot of util-based, composition-based rounds, and still the roam game for other sites like Kitchen, so nothing much to really touch on, except for the Goyo change, of course.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see if these teams are going to be using more vertical play or horizontal, or we can see a nice little mix of both, where Cafe has a really good range of what you're able to do. I remember Kitchen after the rework has been really scary to go up against because the attackers are just able to rip right through the floor, and there's not many places you can stay that are safe. So I'm looking for Achieve to possibly, or even SYR, to be using nades to great effect, and getting those angles is what's going to decide this game. If you're able to maneuver around your opponent and force them into really big choke points, it could be over just then and there.
Yeah, unfortunately, one thing I always like to mention is the operator bans, but since this is very early into the season here for CCL, we're probably going to see just default stuff, Thatcher, maybe the Nomad or Flores perhaps, and then probably following that up with like a Valkyrie or a Mira. You would think with, you know, having Flores as kind of a high target ban, you would see more Wamai to not have such a defender-sided, you know, setup, but no, we actually still see the Valkyrie in ban, even though she's also received a nerf as well. So it's interesting to see that, but maybe we'll be in for a treat as we do have the game actually ready, and we can go take a look at the bans, starting out with, of course, our favorite pick, Thatcher.
No surprise. Like you said, he's a default ban, and for good reason, especially if you look through the floors. He could toss either his EMP through the ground or even just on the floor of a second floor, and it will disable all those ADSs. You can go and throw everything in, and once again, fellow, you got the bans head on. Flores being cut off. And both these bans make perfect logical sense. On the attacking side, they provide a lot of different ways to get into a site, and Flores is so very versatile with what he's able to counter. Only Mute and Mozzie are the ones that will really be a thorn in his side. But Wamai on the defending end is going to be cut off. Interesting enough that it's going to be one of those projectile catching operators, which could mean that Achieved is going to be going for those grenades and looking to use that vertical play to their advantage.
So for most time stall now, you're probably going to have the Aruni and Castle combination rather than, of course, the Mamiya and Jaeger, because one of those two is banned. You'll still have Jaeger on the board a bunch, but it is going to definitely hasten what you can get away with for Achieve Esports. So huge fan of that. The only thing you need to consider is potentially having that Valkyrie. That could strengthen the roam game, especially if there is something like a Malzi on the board as well, to have those pests for extra information, and maybe even a Maestro as well for an actual anchor set of information, and Plantanal, because not every site is very favorable for a smoke. So instead, still having something for that Plantanal like a Maestro could honestly be something to boot, especially if you need to fall back early and actually hold the site rather than going for those tailored extensions.
Third floor bar is going to be the first site we are going to. And John, we're seeing the Mute Mozzie combo, and you have to wonder if with all these teams now having the ability to change their attacking operator during the prep phase, the attacker swap, do you think that that's really playing into shoot the drones, don't let them get any intel, we don't want them knowing who we are? So do you think that we're seeing Mozzie and Mute picked that much more, especially on a third floor site like this where they're not actually able to get in and get the information? Do you think that's playing a part in the way defenders are now choosing their operators?
Potentially, but I haven't seen it all that much in other leagues, for example. I didn't see it a lot in NACL, did not see it a lot in SCS, for example, either. So maybe this could be instead to have some sort of roam game. Certain teams like to actually opt to go play for vertical when they're dealing with bar and cocktail rather than going for that immediate presence inside of Pixel. So maybe they're expecting that. They are anticipating some sort of 6-pick off onto maybe like the Zofia, for example, onto a Buck. And then if that happens, they can have some sort of presence on that middle floor rather than just putting all of their eggs into one basket on this top floor.
Very good point, but now action phase has commenced, and with 2 minutes and 50 seconds, we're looking for Achieve to more manipulate the site. You don't want to lose that time stalling out. You want to be able to be as efficient as possible. Take your time, get the information, and go from there. Speaking of taking their time, Swifted staying in a very solid position. Does not look like they've been droned out. But with that C4 prep, he hears the sledge, and it's just a matter of getting this timing properly. They're waiting for it. C4 will now be cooked, thrown all the way out, doing seemed like a lot of damage to Vazdek, but that is actually going to be a nade from elsewhere, I believe.
No grenades tossed just yet. Potentially a pre-fire that happened somewhere across the map. Thankfully, Vazdek did not actually die. A tad bit unfortunate that we might not have any full-fledged audio just yet. Looks like Melo no longer has his skull intact. Swifted will get that first pick as we have Achieved going for more of that default take. They want to get ticket wall opened up. They want to clear out anybody inside a pixel. But with no shields on the board, it's a very lenient defense by SYR where it looks like they want to go for more or less nitro cell plays via that verticality. And it looks like one of those main people that might try to opt for that is potentially Vazdek, as he still has that C4 now tossing up and maybe having it ready. But Swifted almost gets cleared through Humidor, but thankfully can fall back.
Yeah, Swifted has done a phenomenal job being able to hold their angles and use those angles to maneuver around, but Eric will be there to shut him down finally as they take control of SYR. Now with a minute 20, they turn their attention towards site. They have been able to clear out both SYR shop and SYR lounge, which means they're able to really turn their attention towards site. And once they have that control, it's just a matter of getting a plant, and then the roles are swapped.
Well, still having people like HPR, for example, if he's able to play underneath with a shotgun perhaps and maybe open up the flooring, that could maybe stop a plant. But we haven't seen any site presence just yet. Still Badgers waiting in the back of Ticket, almost catches the Jaeger, but unfortunately loses that engagement. The case now dropped in the middle of Ticket. Things are looking quite worse for Achieve as they might be able to pick up that diffuser, but they still haven't gathered enough map control to make that final push without having to really go into some sort of challenging position against SYR.
30 seconds. Each of these teams need to be the one to make the first move. Preferably Achieve. They'll swing up Vazdex to find the head of Dunny down to a 2v4. They'll be downed. Amazing that they're able to go this far with such little amounts of health. Finally, Stews will finish them off. Swinging around, we're going to have a little bit of a rave up in here. As we even have a player disconnect, not sure what's going on with the servers, but Eric is going to make the most of it, swinging up, not able to find Naj inside a freezer, and that's going to be the first round going the way of SYR.
Looks like we'll head into a tactical pause, but yeah, a great first round for SYR. Having a tad bit of an unorthodox composition for that top floor, but it still worked because they were able to find that opening pick, or at least some sort of refrag as well. No, they did have that 5 versus 5. Things were traded back, but they never really gave away a lot of proper map control. We saw a late rotate happen over towards Pixel, which actually caught the Havana of Badger off guard, and then that completely stalled all of what Achieve was trying to accomplish around that round. They only got full control of Cigar Shop, basically, and they had to more or less go for a funnel. There was one player, of course, trying to rotate in through Bathroom to get Freezer control, but he didn't even have any information that someone pardon, was directly inside a Freezer, so it was more or less just a last-ditch attempt just to try to run in and win your gunfights, which wasn't favorable for Achieve because they were down in a 4v2 position base.
Yeah, I could not have said that better myself. Going forward, that means that Bar is no longer going to be an option for the next 2 rounds because the defenders did win it outright. So we're going to be going down to the bottom 2 sites. I think Kitchen is the most probable area to go. And you mentioned that Iruni Castle strategy. Now that we've seen that first round from SYR, do you think that that still will be true if they're going to go for more of a Mozzie Mute Jaeger strategy once again?
Well, the Mew and Mozzie did work out just to allow the aggression to be relatively well. They didn't have to worry about all that much, like placing their util or just trying to hold certain parts of the map. They just kind of ran at Achieve and just won their gunfights. So maybe we'll see the Mutant Mozzie again. It's much more viable on the double kitchen site, but we could see that Arunian Castle, especially if you're a team that loves to go for that first floor extension, if you want to hold code check to have a crossfire to stop a default plant, if it's happening from the bakery wall, or if you want to hold VIP for a little while, maybe have backup again near that code check / whiskey bar position. It's on the drawing board for sure. But instead, we're kind of having a half and half because, well, we're not going to kitchen. We're actually heading into reading room. First and foremost, we still have that Aruni on the board, which will most likely be helpful to slow down that push from the top floor, but they also still have plenty of utility to help for that late end execute, like the Malusis, which will give away any potent information as to where this push is coming from. And they also have the smoke grenades as well, which will probably be more or less used for that top floor. It is much easier for HPR to have them to stop that push from the top floor, but they also have nitriles as well, which can do the exact same thing just from the floorboards, of course, and not directly in front of them near that double doorway leading in cocktail.
Yeah, I'm rather interested in the way we see SYR actually choosing to use utility. So we have the bulletproof cameras, which are a lot more effective from our last CCL season where they were quite basic, to be honest, where now they can actually turn, look, and use a EMP, which is quite a pleasant change. We also we have the shield, as you mentioned, the nitro as well. So SYR has a lot of capabilities, but we cannot forget to mention that on the side of Achieve, they have more than enough to deal with that. 3 breaching charges, which clearly indicates that in combination with the sledge, getting this vertical control is their #1 priority. I normally set up a timeline that says I want to get to the top and have it completely cleared out by at latest 1 minute and 30 remaining. Because with that minute 30 seconds of just blowing everything up could make a whole difference. But look at this fellow. They've already gone into train, and this is a complete opposite of the push I was expecting.
The one nice thing about going for a mining push, actually instead leading into Fireplace, is that you really only have to clear out the area of Piano, then just hold that passively, and unfortunately someone sitting underneath the chandelier will get caught by a breaching charge and inadvertently give the first pick favoring Achieve. Vazdek, though, is in a very good position to maybe refrag, perhaps. It looks like Mello has their number next to Pillar, so he'll try to flush him out with that LMG. Such a challenging gun to go up against, and thankfully Vazdex will get out with his life, but losing half their health will make him a very vulnerable target moving into this last minute 30.
Nade being cooked by Dunny. Gonna try to ricochet off, but look, Naj has rotated right on around. Will get caught by that air jab from Stewie. Gonna work out quite well, and that gives almost entire vertical control, but Rapid is still inside a bathroom, and you still have Vazdex, who's rotated towards White Stairs. Even with all this pressure from Train, you can see SYR knowing that they do not have the capability to give up vertical just yet.
Minute left here. Achieve have not let off any death just yet, but they might not be expecting Vazdex on this flank, neither Rapid. If they have their team cohesion on sync, they could maybe find something, but Stu's waiting with such patience, looking down through from New Balk all the way into heaven, will catch the Valkyrie off guard, and as the plant begins to be attempted here by Achieve, there really is nothing to stop them but potentially HPR, but he gets his head ripped cleaned off his shoulders. Now only Rapid left to stand in a 1 versus time, the clock as well no longer favoring him. He'll just end up dying on out inside of Reading Room, and it's flawlessly done by Achieve to now equalize.
If you look at Achieve's push right on through the entire round, they had a clear motive and directive. We saw the nades used to great proficiency. I don't think we saw a nade kill, but we saw so much of this HP taken off. We saw players constantly, for example, the smoke of HPR, he was pressured behind the cabinet from the nade of Dunny as they just sprayed through with the LMG. And it does look like we are going to have some audio problems, but regardless, you saw a beautiful distribution of utility from Achieve, and they also did a phenomenal job clearing and holding up stairs. I also want to highlight Stewie for that first Nomad kill, using the air jab, and then that second one onto Vazdex on balcony. That was so effective because you saw them get on their drone, off their drone, on their drone, off their drone, and that plethora of information can make the attacker's job so much easier.
Moving into double kitchen, looks like we are not going to have the castle or a Rooney this time about, but there is still plenty of plant denial, both the yokais and smoke grenades as well. That could also help extend into potentially VIP, for example, but not having those ADSs does make that a position that could easily be dealt with just by a singular grenade or maybe even an explosive lifeline. That would force HPR to potentially fall back, and if someone was watching that double window inside of VIP, that could be lights out for him. So I would probably expect him just to hold down the site in an anchor position and maybe have Naj join him, either that or play inside of Bakery very passively. Either or, because of the relative lack of anti-flash slash, anti-util for the defense, that could make the site presence a tad bit weaker depending on how vulnerable SYR Esports are once that vertical goes down by Achieve.
We're seeing Badger switch on and off of the Habana or the Ace. I find that quite interesting, especially for a site like Kitchen, where you would assume that you'd want to be opening up as much wall as possible. Instead, Habana is really the one you think of when you think of hatches, and there's only one main hatch to get onto site here. So John, do you think that a Habana pick could actually be more viable in this case for the flashes, or is there something that I'm missing?
The flashes, yes, and also you tend to have someone go into white stairs. That could be the Habana player, and it's not too difficult to get that back freezer wall opened up. So it isn't a horrible decision, especially if you want to go for more of that default top to bottom clear. Whereas if you wanted to go into Bakery, for example, then you could potentially see either a Maverick and a Zofia or even the Maverick and Ace pick be much more viable because of how much easier it is to have that kind of heart breach when you're going in for that double wall. Even a Thermite as well, depending on how you fully want to clear out that top floor as well later on. But if you're going for this normal roam clear like Achieve is doing, the Habana is completely fine.
Minute 30. I see what you're saying with the Habana, but we also have to take in mind that on the side of Achieve, they're playing their roles with great effect. It's a very structured roam clear, and I think that's something that we've come to expect, especially here inside a cafe. It's top down. You play it, check every single corner, and once you have it secured, you have those Nomad air jabs to really rotate in and around to secure it. You know that you're not going to be losing any sort of control, and once you have it, we're at the minute point. You have the sledge with his breaching hammer to just rain fire from above, and Dunny is going to be the first to capitalize on all these breaching holes, as the nade will be able to come into contact with Vazdex.
Unfortunately, the fallback not being quick enough for Vazdex, so he will be that first entry here favoring Achieve, and as the vertical goes down, the timer is not favoring Achieve all that much, but it looks like they still have some sort of semblance on that bottom floor to maybe begin to clear out the actual site presence. A nade gets tossed. Rapid will receive a bit of damage dealt, but not anything to be that concerned about. Still, not having that man advantage could be the sole reason that Achieve could still win this, despite the fact they've only got 20 seconds left.
We can't forget that they do have the Nitro inside of Swifted's pocket, and if Naj is able to stay alive just long enough, they will be able to deny that plant. Swifted biding their time, and they'll be able to catch the Zofia of Mellow. Stu's able to find Swifted as the approach onto site is now coming into full effect. Diffuser plant will be successful on the side of Freezer. Rapid rotating around, but Dunny's there to hold the angle. Badger up above as well. No, they push into site. Stu's also pushing in from Bakery. And once again, Achieve doing a phenomenal job of splitting the site and giving absolutely zero breathing room for SYR.
And although we had Swifted actually be in a kind of a ratty position in small Bakery because nobody checked for him, it only bared him a singular pick. It really didn't seem like Achieved Esports was all that phased. And again, not having those Jaeger ADSs, not having a shield or anything in VIP did allow Achieved Esports to kind of nonchalantly just kind of get in through Freezer with both the hatch and that white stairwell presence, and almost immediately got that plant down. And also not having any proper extension near Whiskey Bar or Coat Check like I had talked about earlier in the round, they didn't have to really fight for anything. And on top of that, the only presence or pressure that they had to deal with was basically on that middle floor, and it was a fallback approach actually by SYR once they wasted a ton of time, which I'm not always a big fan on. You should maybe have at least one or two players still up there to maybe at least die, find a pick, and then fall back, because that can waste even more time. And to think, if we had 10 more seconds burned off the clock by Achieve, they might have had no time to properly check every nook and cranny, and they might have actually not have been able to get the plant down.
And we can't forget that their initial clear took them all. It took 2 whole minutes for them to get into position. I think when I called that out, it was the final minute remaining. With 1 minute, that's when we actually saw Eric with the sledgehammer start going from up above. And Vazdex was already killed by a nade from this point, if I remember correctly. But it does beg the question, if SYR does go and plan to stall for just a little bit more time, Vazdex now choosing to get a little bit more aggressive with their peeking out into the spawn side of Achieve. These are the little things that if you force them to have to look out for these spawn peaks, they're going to slow down. Their approach will have to be more and more rushed. But with those pushes, you can't get too aggressive. Swift is going to fall. That's the Cade. Ooh. Badger to find Vazdex. 2 quick kills. That's not how you slow down a push. That's how you speed it up from the attackers, because they have a lot less to worry about.
And because Achieve have that instant man advantage, they could completely forget about clearing the top and middle floor. They could honestly go for a site rush. Now 5 versus 2 as Mello will rip the head off of HPR. I mean, there isn't really much holding them back. It's a couple of impact grenades and maybe just the positioning of Naj and Rapid overall. But again, it's a 5 versus 2. Achieve could simply just throw bodies at the problem and just get site control. It really is that easy, despite the fact that the lone 2 defenders are holding the site directly. There aren't many positions for them to hold because Achieve can just approach at every which way and completely halt this whole stall here for SYR, but at least they find something, Biggs.
When you throw a body, you want to make sure that there's a second one to be able to follow it up. In that case, Rapid was able to get a quick kill and not have to worry about it whatsoever. Badger going to find Naj peeking out just a little bit too much. Now worrying about the vertical. Eric still doing a phenomenal job of getting into position. They'll find the final kill on the round. And Achieve once again taking it. Fellow, even when they had the man advantage, you didn't see them get reckless. They are here and they're taking every single bit serious. They don't want to count any of these players out, because even when it's a 2v5, if you're able to clutch it, so can they. Take it slow, play very structured, and that's why we saw Eric still go up above.
Yeah, I'm glad we only had Achieve really throw maybe 1 body, and that was it, and that's completely fine. Again, 5 versus 2. You've got that breathing room to just waste somebody at least, and that was still giving vital information of, hey, the note, or pardon the Aruni, sorry, has fallen back. They're near double door. Expect one in the back of kitchen near our old default plant, and then the other person is in prep because they were caught on a drone earlier. So they had the information necessary to get in that site and just find the last 2 picks to win the round outright. And again, at least acknowledging there was some innate aggression off the back by SYR was a really good call by Achieve. They won those first 2 gunfights, and then they had all the leeway in the world to just do what they wanted. So good stuff by Achieve to really claw back after having that first loss and then doing nothing but outwin your opponents in every single site now.
Well, we haven't
bar,
seen
actually.
Train.
Oh, and mining, of course, yeah. I should have said the default sites. That's on me. And
There
technically, we have
go.
not had bar be won by Achieve either, but they have won 3 in a row. I should have specified. That's on me.
Regardless, fellow, there's room, and I think you have your theory, and it could be put to the test this round. If SYR is able to hold it, then we know, okay, maybe they can't take the top floor. But regardless, Achieved did a phenomenal job clearing top down when they didn't have to worry about constant pressure, where they were able to get into the building and situate themselves. So when we look at Bar, this is the one site where either you go bottom up, or you still have to go right onto site, which is a lot more dangerous. We saw them actually establish control when they took control of SYR as well as ticketing. But regardless, they have that control, and they have to work with it. C4 from Swifted, second attempt, wrong side. Just unfortunate, not going to be able to connect whatsoever. But now with the 2 minutes and 15 seconds, Achieved is looking to get into the building finally.
So with SYR's slightly different composition from what I can recall, they could maybe hold out inside of Humidor for a tad bit longer. The only thing I don't like about this is they do not have a castle, so this Mozzie player is very vulnerable to not only the hatch play, but also someone playing on the windows near piano itself. So because of that, he has to fall back at an incredibly early time, and for what? Really nothing, just a couple of drones and some small holes being opened up really by Achieve, and that's honestly it. He's already back on the middle floor inside of train room. Yes, he could go for a C4 if he wanted to, but actually no, he cannot, because remember, he used it earlier on the new hatch. So for really nothing, he has to already fall back and give so much map control here for Achieve.
Little spray here from Dunny trying to find the mute jammer. Will be able to find it, but that also gives away their position. They'll take a lot of damage. Eric to find Swifted, that's the Mozzie. They got all their utility down early on the round, so you don't have to worry about that C4 dying and staying in their pocket. Meanwhile, we have the Aruni sitting extremely far back on the corner. Won't be spotted out by Vazdex, using that DMR to great proficiency as they will rotate around, knowing that their position has been compromised. Very interesting to look at the distribution of defenders here with 1 minute remaining. They are not taking an aggressive position. They are waiting for Achieve to get into these critical choke points, because unlike those first floor sites, there's no way to really work unless you took the buck, which in this case Achieve does not have. They are able to sit extremely comfortable in each one of these positions, hold their angles, and wait for the time when it is right to push up.
There goes the grenade, beautifully tossed out by Dunny. Stews will find one onto Naj as he was able to pick off his teammate, but still, man advantage here for Achieve. They've got 2 flashbangs and plenty of time to try to get this plant down. HBR is kind of in a cheeky position, but I don't think he can really stop the plant unless he gets aggressive. Speaking of aggression, though, we've got Vazdex and now HBR, speaking of the devil, winning their ones, leaving just Badger in the middle of sight, finds one with the bearing 9, but Vazdex is there from the middle of bathroom to get the final pick, and thankfully, we have the defensive side of SYR hold on for yet another round on this top floor.
So that means that Achieve has not been able to win every single site. But now that it comes down to the final round before the split, we need to see that SYR is able to hold a site like Kitchen. Because when you really think about it, the ability for Achieve to just completely push them out using those different angles is what is killing them the fastest. So they're actually going to change to go for Reading and Fireplace. And based on their operator composition, we can assume that they're going to be going for a lot more of a vertical hold, because when they give that up, that's where things get difficult. That's where you see all these holes opened up. The other important thing is that they've had time to think about how Achieved has been attacking. The last time we saw them come in through train, and the reason why that works so well is that they were able to open up both the train walls, come in through the middle, as well as split up Reading from having the vertical control. So if you're in the seat of SYR, or if you're a SYR fan, what you're looking for them to do is really hold vertical, be able to hold white stairs a lot more proficiently, because those are the long angles that you have to worry about. If they're able to hold it and not lose it, not worry about the window, and just isolate each one of those angles, the cross angles as we mentioned earlier, that is how you're going to be able to win this and just completely lock Achieved out.
Really expecting a potential early fallback here for SYR, because the fact they've got about 3 nitro cells in pocket here for their defense, yet they don't have a lot of util to really hold out this top floor. Again, no shields, which has been a very common occurrence here by SYR. The most we have seen was probably on their kitchen defense, and those shields, because there were no ADSs, they didn't stand up for very long, but they have a bunch of nitro cells. So what I'm expecting is they try to hold this top floor for a relatively long time and trying to hold basically the entire floor, already extending into piano room. But then if they need to, if there's too much pressure on them, they will in fact go back down a floor lower, try to use those C4s, especially if the black eye cameras and pest remain on the board, and then they'll just try to stop the vertical play via those nitro cells. But if that fails, there really isn't much holding back Achieve once they go for that final execute. So I am very concerned that they are putting a lot of attention onto this top floor, yet aren't really putting all that much util to try to prove that 1 point, Banks.
Yeah, bar is very easy to take when you don't have the utility to back you up. I think that's one of the reasons why we saw Mira banned out on this map, because of how effective they are. Beautiful shots being lined up, not able to find the head onto Eric, however. But once again, we see that Achieved is really fighting to get control of Train, and from Rapid swinging out, Mello will find the head. That LMG, as you mentioned earlier, very, very lethal, and it will secure all control of Train, and a quick trade upstairs between Swifted and Eric. That's your sledge off the board. That is actually a critical pick that will definitely help SYR really fight to take this one back. Vazek still alive, spraying out, trying to find the Zofia. They'll be able to find it. Mello now to hit the ground. Badger has to find this refrag, otherwise the Chief could be in a very, very tough position.
They're able to find this pick on a Mozzie. Things could definitely alleviate in terms of pressure. A great swing around, though, by the Mozzie. Cannot find that first blood, or I should say at least that first pick here. But he has to worry about the player inside of Train. That will be Dunny. Will now drop out the Mozzie. Man advantage back in the favor of the offense. And I would agree that having Eric off the board could be problematic. But once again, we're seeing more or less a fireplace clear, and that really doesn't require all that much vertical pressure. If anything, they just need to pick off this person who's sitting directly inside a fireplace, and then once they only have to worry about HPR, they could probably get a plant down.
Yeah, if you look at that kill that Vazek just nearly missed out on, Badger, that ace, who's now being used to actually push their control into reading, NJR or Naj just narrowly getting spotted out, and that leaves all the pressure up to Hyper or HPR. They're stuck behind the cabinet. They're gonna have to find 3 huge kills or delay for 30 seconds. Pushing out C4 will be detonated, but when you detonate it, you're not able to ADS, and there you go. That's gonna be a 4-2 split favoring Achieved.
And I was going to say, even if they only found 3 rounds, that's still a very good first half on your offenses. I think the fact that we had SYR kind of allow Achieve to set themselves up in slightly favorable gunfights was one of the main reasons why we've had a bunch of rounds in the pocket of Achieve. I mean, that sounds very obvious, but again, we've seen a lack of general util favoritism by SYR, and it was more or less just them trying to get aggressive at certain times and hoping that they could catch their opponents off guard. But Achieve really didn't seem phased throughout that entire first half, and besides the bar defense, they did a very solid job of clearing out that roam game, getting proper control of the site, and at least attempting, if not putting themselves in a post-plant position. So that was just, in general, a very solid first half for them. Now they're moving in on the defense with probably a very high morale, and now it's going to be up to SYR to try to at least lessen that advantage, and if not, equalize slash, bring themselves back in the advantage now that they're on the offense.
I'm interested to see. We're seeing some pretty interesting defensive composition. Alibi, Warden, Valkyrie, Mute, and Jaeger. I can't remember the last time I saw these operators in the same composition. That's a lot of 3 speeds and 2 speeds. And fellow, give me a hot take on this. How can these operators really work together to establish anything?
Well, I think it's very good, especially in terms of secondary utility. Again, Goyo nerf, you have less shields in general, so having both Warden and Alibi in selection with shields is a great thing. Also, you have just a great gun for Stews, so he can be one of those main entries, just run around and shoot people, go for a hero play if needed, and you've got Eric, who can play aggressive, pop his glasses on, and he could deny any sort of flashbangs. Now, the only thing his gadget cannot deny, probably those grenades. So if the ADSs get burned off completely and there's a nade waiting for him, then that could be problematic. But besides that, huge fan of the Warden pick, and I'm glad we're seeing him in play more and more as this new season progresses.
I like to think that a lot of defensive teams will take operators that counter the way that they were playing on attack. And if you really think about it, those stuns and flashes pushing in were a pivotal part. Swinging right on in, it's going to be an aggressive push. Badger to find one, swings out. Nitro won't be able to connect. Vazdex and Rapid both able to find their picks. Meanwhile, Mello with the C4 won't be able to connect. But look at this, they've been able to get into such a critical position. They have the site, but Mello with a triple kill. They're looking to finish it off, but it's going to be Eric with that SMG 12. And just like that, Achieve wins their first defending round off a rush from SYR.
Once again, for Achieve, they are just completely cognate of any type of play that we see SYR attempt. They may have gotten some site control and they may have gotten the plant down, but they still had to worry about the player of Mello next to Brown Stairs and the people on the top floor that ended up falling back a level to come help out and alleviate that pressure inside of the objective. It didn't matter that for a moment SYR caught their opponents off guard because it was an immediate adaptation. The snap of a finger we had Achieved try to respond, and it worked out so well for them, especially Mello, who found a 3 kill in that round, but we also had the mute directly in sight, getting that first pick on the Finka and not letting her progress any further inside of reading room, and also the Warden to get the last kill of the round. I believe that was actually Eric, funny enough. So again, good stuff by Achieve, and really everyone is playing their part to deny SYR of any type of play they really want to try to elaborate on.
Need to locate and defuse as many bombs as they can.
Now going down to the first floor site, we see operators switching once again. Thunderbird coming into play, as well as the Vigil from Dunny. And I don't think we saw the smoke one round from SYR previously, and that was on their reading and fireplace defense, or reading and dining defense. It didn't work too well, but I'm interested to see with the shield, you have the roamer of Dunny. All the players on Achieved are switching up. They're able to play with very, almost perfect unison with how they are swinging around. But will that be countered by SYR? Because they are taking the right operators to do so. They're switching the Twitch to the Maverick, especially since seeing that it is going to be a first floor attack. It makes sense. You want to be able to get into as much sight as possible. The sledge to get rid of any denial on the walls, but hey, it's just a Cade. They're keeping one in their pocket. So if you are able to juggle your utility properly, that should be a lot of line of sights favoring the attackers.
For SYR Esports, I could imagine they would prefer to get bakery control. They've got the Ace and Maverick that I briefly touched upon earlier in this matchup, but they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They still want to try to clear out this roam presence. They want to get the vertical down, and that does help because now it doesn't. Those sightlines do not get used against you if the roam game refuses to fall back and they try to kill you while you're going for a plant through the bakery opening. So going for this multifaceted approach, big fan of. It just depends on how effective you can be on that late round rotation, whether that be on that middle floor, like I had mentioned, or if you want to go for a slightly different push, you could maybe try to clear out anybody inside of coat check or reception, which is also another great way to not just all funnel in through that bakery double wall and get caught via the vertical.
As previously mentioned, fellow, you said they're going to be going for this bakery push, and that's exactly what we're starting to see, using these Maverick holes to phenomenally open up what they need. But Vazdex is going to take out Swifted as well as Stu to find one, and that's already down to a 5v3 in a matter of seconds. Refrag, there's 2 for Vazdex. He's going to be able to find the refrag onto Stu. All these Toxic Babes detonating, and Toxic Babe in combination with a Finka boost is extremely lethal. And a change that, or not a change, a counter that I'm pretty sure a lot of people forget in a lot of scenarios.
Minute 20 here, and now we get to see the importance of needing to clear out players like Dunny. He's still just prowling about, even having backup from Mello now as well, just kind of sitting next to Red Stairwell. Case has also dropped. I could imagine that'd be picked up soon by SYR, but if not, they would most likely have to go in and work for some sort of pick, which isn't great since they are at a deficit here. We had Vazdex in the middle of sight, but he'll be quickly cut down by Badger. 4 versus 2 for Achieve, and a strong advantage, and really nothing but that bakery control has been established as Rapid ends up trying to go into the site. He ends up dying as well by Badger, and now it's only Naj trapped in the middle of kitchen, cooking itself, and he could theoretically try to go for a plant, but then he would have no coverage. He finds one onto Mello, but it's still a 1v3, and he needs to worry about these crossfires, and still hasn't dealt with Badger right across the ways next to the soft walling. He'll find his third, and it's match point already in the first map for Achieve Esports.
We can't forget that this was Achieved match pick, or map pick. So it makes sense that they'd have this astonishing lead, but it doesn't make up for the fact that we should see at least a little bit more from SYR. They've had amazing initial pushes. It's just a matter of them being able to continue that momentum. I think you mentioned it, clearing up above is such a critical part of taking kitchen. And if you forget to take it, then chances are the defense are going to use it against you. It's fine. It's completely fine to go for just a completely horizontal push. But that's when the defenders are not going to be using it against you. And I do believe we saw, was it Eric on the vigil? No, it was not Eric
It was
on
Dunny.
the vigil. It's Dunny on the vigil. I looked to the wrong side of my screen, but Dunny on that vigil. You mentioned up above, and that was, how can they push in? They have no viable way to push in because those line of sights are assisted from up above. It is so hard to look down and up all at the same time, and we saw it attempted by, I want to say, not Hyper. It was Rapid that played the Maverick last round. Maverick was trying to look through. They had to constantly switch what angle they were holding, and that stops so much coverage for your teammates.
Well, I'm very happy after so many rounds of not seeing the FBI operator. We finally get to have Castle on the board, and no longer will we have somebody playing in Humidor having to instantly fall back because there are no Castle panel on that double doorway that Nova is thankfully highlighting. Yeah, look at that sight line from that one window in the south side all the way down into that double Castle doorway. Yeah, that no longer is as big of a problem, especially when you have either Syria gates or ADSs, which thankfully there are the latter, to deny anybody from throwing out breaching rounds. We do have the Ash on the board, so if she doesn't have anybody help her out with like a flashbang or two, then she's not going to be able to break that castle barricade so easily now that she only has 2 breaching rounds instead of 3 like she did back in the day. So we could see that Humidor position being held for quite some time depending on the coordination attempted here by SYR.
Interesting enough, when you said the FBI operator, I immediately looked to Ash because we know that Vazdex is quite a crazy player, and it was on this bar site that we first initially saw Vazdex go absolutely berserk. So it's just a matter of if we will be able to see that once again. All the utility is what SYR's going to have to clear. They have to slow it down, take their time. If they overextend, especially without clearing the utility, that's where things are going to get extremely dangerous. Swifted to catch Mello on, I believe, what was a run out. Nade being cooked, and that will give the clear indication that there's nothing holding this castle wall. So if Ash is able to rotate around, double doors open, lines of sight completely free for the taking, and it will force all these players from Achieve to take a very big step back in towards sight.
A good start by SYR to get that first pick. Unfortunately, they'll lose it just as I give them the caster curses. Vazdek was hopping in through Whitehall window and got caught by the Jaeger. A bit of an odd decision, but oh well. And Eric D tries to get aggressive against Rapid, who's on the rappel, and he's not going to be having any of that. So thankfully, SYR can bring that man advantage back. But they still haven't dealt with Badger, which could be a problem, especially if they do not get that castle barricade open and basically have to force themselves to funnel in through either new or red Balk.
A bomb has been located.
Shotgun blast from Badger will connect onto Rapid, bring it into a 3v3, and they'll use the C4 to great effect. 2 for Badger, also assisted by Dunny. This leads up to the lonesome nomad of Naj. They'll push in, and Stewie to find the final kill for this first half. Achieve holding their map pick, and I gotta say that is a lot of momentum going on to the second map.
Yeah, and I really got a question there for the side of SYR, why they didn't want to maybe throw a flash, bring out any sort of grenade either, because there were already 2 ADSs expended inside of Piano, so only having maybe 1 to deal with for Badger, that would have forced him to fall back, that would have given you some vital map control. You could have then worked your way inside of Piano and gone for a rather default take, but no, we didn't have any of that happen. Everyone just one by one walked into the mute and just died from his Mossberg. I mean, that was just a very odd decision. I get it, you're kind of running low on time, but just taking a few extra seconds to guarantee that pick or guarantee that map control really goes a long way when you still have to worry about the site presence as well, Biggs.
It sure does, and we saw that really well done from Achieved on the first half. Those drones, I can't remember a time when we didn't see a drone moving around, and I always like to talk about just the idea for these teams to always have an image where if you're talking to a team, I should be able to say pause on a round. And each of the players on that team, especially the support, should be able to paint an entire picture. Even from just a still drone frame, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I think especially in Rainbow, it's probably worth 1,000,000 with how much information you can gather from one single still image.
Well, all that being said, Banks, before we get into round number 2, there is a quick little break, so we'll be back in just a little while to see who comes out on top as we transition into Villa after a 5-minute break.
Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance, not the life I want to live. I want to take it all, standing tall, fear I weighed the person you are. Oh, break out, I've got to see. Spent all my life holding all of it closely. I played it in a sense, a feel of discontent. I'm finally facing it all, fearless.
Alive can't put me in a box. I redefine any definition you got. I am the tiger, I'm making steps to the top. The flames, I whip it up, you just gotta hand me the rock. Take a seat, you cannot stand it. All I know, the flow harder than a Scotch bonnet. Don't try study me, you cannot manage. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Yeah, you better listen. I'm bringing heat. You'll be a fan when I start rapping. Way I'll have your fucking head spinning. I'm known as spit vicious. Release bombs and go tick tick. Boom, you blow me that head missing. I'm a phenomenon. Stacking cheese like it's Parmesan. 8 different flows, call me Octomom. I'm moving fast like the Autobahn. And I'm independent, so I'm not your fucking starving like it's Ramadan. Sick, twisted, gifted. Can't copy, printed. Can't hold me down. I shape shift, I'm liquid. I killed this beat. I might get convicted. They know how I move. It was predicted. Persistent. Spoke it into existence, so consistent, no assistance. Hear me once, become addicted. If I rap it, then I live it. There's no cap, and I'll be speaking this.
This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon. This ain't what you want, bitch, I'm a fucking phenomenon.
Don't you dare say that I wanted everything to fall apart when it's hard.
Welcome back to CCL, ladies and gentlemen. I am Binks, joined here by John Commentate, or Fellow. Great to have you here. But we just saw a great first map, and I gotta tell you, this production is powered by Northern Arena, so thank you so much to them. It's always a absolute blast working with you guys. But we just saw a crazy game. It was first Cafe, and we saw Achieve take it against SYR. But now we're going over to SYR's map pick of Villa. So as we jump right on in to our ban phase, we don't mess around here, CCL. We bring you the action right away without any delays. Fellow, you got the bans bang on last time, so what do you got this time?
Probably something very similar. Maybe a target ban, as we have now seen a whole match played by the two teams, but Flores and Thatcher are still super viable on a map like Villa. Maybe a Habana ban, perhaps, for SYR, as I don't think they really brought her out of that much. They actually preferred Ace a lot more from what I could recall, or I might have that actually mixed up between Achieve and SYR, but some sort of hard breach ban, that could be very viable as well. But no, we'll stick to Thatcher, so don't need to really discuss the hard breach potential all that much just yet. And then we either see that Lamai ban along with the Mira, or we see a Valkyrie Mira. That's what you normally see on a map like Villa.
I'm going to see if we'll see something like the Cade, but almost the entirety of Villa is complete destructible flooring. So you can either go in there with the Maverick and blowtorch the entire wall, go for a little hole, pop a nade right through, and there's not too many creative, I guess I could say, or unheard of Cade spots, where Cade's been out for a very long time now, and it's going to be almost the exact same operator bans, except Valkyrie, the one to go instead of Mira. So Mira is on the board, but for a lot of defensive setups on Villa, you don't see the Mira, as she's not completely in meta rotation because of how proficient that ban is.
Yeah, I've got to say, there are also a lot of good ways to counter the Mira. There, of course, is now the obvious option of Twitch, which we have seen in play in this best of 3 so far on Cafe, and now again, unless it gets picked off later on during like the final pick phase during the prep. But also, there are a lot of good vertical spots you can play for when there is a Mira on the board. So it's rather counterintuitive, especially since a lot of teams still like to go for that vertical play most times. It's just only one extra thing that they need to clear out. So not having the Mira banned isn't a big deal. We probably won't see her all that much unless there's a heavy anchor stylization by both Achieve and SYR, which on the first map, we really didn't have that happen. So I doubt we'll see her all that much in play, if at all, depending.
Another operator to look at here would be the Zero, where that would also once again be another counter to the Mira. But it's actually a counter to a lot of different operators on the side of Achieve. You're going to be able to disable any sort of Jaeger ADS, as well as Cade Claws. Now, I would say Melusi, but that's only if you open it up, and if you're standing in the enough proximity to actually open up a Melusi charge, chances are you're just going to shoot it. But with all of this electricity, I'm actually interested. Did you catch a look, Fellow, to see if we actually had any debris on where that Cade Claw was thrown?
Well, it could either be put over into like the door frame itself, as you normally get to see that happen, but maybe not. We actually cannot quite see it. Nova's trying to look for it. There's currently a potted plant actually impairing his vision. So no,
thank you though, Nova.
We can't quite tell where it is, but it's somewhere guarding hunting. So depending on where it's placed, it might not get caught by a grenade or potentially by that Twitch drone. So that is something to note for a brief moment. But before we get into that hard destruction, we have to see the main roam clear be successful, which so far it is. SYR's going to get that first pick. Dunny's going to die early on. And now they can slowly work their way from both statue and trophy all the way into 90. Maybe get that hunting wall opened up and have somebody late rotate steady and just have a relatively common push on this first round, just based on the fact that they killed Dunny very early.
Yeah, that could help out. Good use of that EMP from the bulletproof camera. That's actually the first time I see it really utilized, and it was a great way to use it. But there's Swifted from down below to catch Mellow off guard. Next up is going to be Stewie, who is still holding 90, going to be pushed back from the nade, and a good chance to rotate back. You don't want to hold a position for too long, otherwise you're going to get caught off guard, and it's going to hurt your team more than help it.
We already have plenty of damage being done by SYR. Finally, someone on the side of Achieve will at least avenge some of their fallen comrades. Vazdex will now fall. Still one set of grenades. That's not a big concern here, but the general clear could be lacking unless we see the actual Argus cameras used to break those Surya gates and maybe the ADSs as well. And not to mention, we still have Badger with 2 gas grenades. He may have used one early on to stop that 90 presence, but besides that, the overall stall here by Achieve is not too shabby. They just got to work another pick to at the very least equalize here, Banks.
Swifted also coming up huge, being able to get rid of that shield. We saw the Cade of Eric just constantly holding it, so to force them off that position, especially with that 1.5 angle, will switch up the round considerably. Naj, I think, attempting to shoot out the Sharia gate, but it will not work. Rapid with the F2 pushing up. They have their kill. Stews to find their second on the round. They have site control. It's just a matter of them being able to be proficient enough to get this plant. 33 seconds to go. Toxic Babes now being cooked out. And this Finka boost further ensures that none of these attackers are going to be pushing in through these Toxic Babes, giving the defenders just that extra little bit of breathing room. Hyper to find Stewie. And now with a tiny sliver of HP, they'll push into the site. Badger to find one. They just have to deny for 15 more seconds. But the spray from Naj with 0 will work out. And I do believe that is SYR taking this first round.
It would be correct. They had the first 2 opening picks, tons of map control, and again, that allowed them to end up rotating later on, and also gave them time to play for the vertical just slightly. Even if it was only Swifted, he removed that 1 power position, which if we didn't have the study play work at all, and we didn't have the grenades catch that shield, then it would have been a very challenging position to try to get skull pressure and actually go for a plant near default between that little vault doorway / maps. So that was great coordination and late round rotations by SYR to at least confirm they had less to deal with in terms of not only the man count, but also the general positioning of their opponents have achieved. So for once, they're going to have an incredibly solid round, and on the first one as well, very commendable there for SYR.
I like how they're starting to use the Iana, especially from Vazdex, where they know how to maneuver around the map. We've seen crazy rushes from Vazdex. Oh, we just saw it. I knew it. So Eric is using the Cade Claw behind the vault wall, which is almost impossible to destroy. So that almost ensures that you need to use a Maverick to get open the vault wall. So on the other side, it's almost impossible for our observer to really show. But on the side of games from vault wall, you can throw the Cade Claw behind there, and it's very, very safe and secure. Regardless, back to my point, Vazdex on the Iana being able to know how to maneuver around defenses to keep that Iana clone alive for the longest and gather the most amount of information makes up for what we could have seen was maybe a lack of droning on SYR, or just really propel that level of droning and information to the next level. Because like we said, where the picture from a drone can be worth 1,000,000 words, that information Iana clone gives is worth even more because it can help just deceive your opponents.
Unfortunately, Vazdex not cooking the nade long enough. Swifted will be able to. Even gets a nice hold to actually bounce off a secondary nade. Doesn't find anything. But it was a pretty cheeky play, I have to admit that. So still that 5-on-5. With more of a main clear being attempted here by SYR, they've already wasted almost all their grenades but 1 in the hands of Vazdex, which they most likely will try to save for maybe some sort of shield perhaps, or this player directly in the middle of main stairs itself. So nothing really to be concerned about so far for either team, as this is once again a pretty standard setup by both SYR and Achieve. I think the only thing that could be a concern later on is maybe Mellow on this roam, but thankfully having the Nomad can at least have your 6 watched and not needing to worry about getting shot in the back by that pesky roamer of the Malusi.
Minute 45. Mellow still holding strong. They just have to play for time, though. We saw Achieved rotate around time and use it to their advantage so well. They'll be able to find almost 2 picks. There's the second one, Stu, as well as Vazdex being lit up all the way down towards 20 health. If they are able to work with this man advantage, take their time, hold their own sight, then this could actually propel them towards the second round if you're able to find that winning formula. But that is a long time away. With a minute 15, there's still more than enough for SYR to recover.
Oh, and no longer clearing out 90. That's a big thing to worry about when you're trying to go for more of a study/main take. The nice vertical holes done by Stews to find another on this round. HPR will try to get aggressive, can connect a single kill, but there's Dunny next to Skull to now equalize. Only Swifted left to stand. No adrenaline surges left on the board. He is on that singular set of 5 to all the way down to maybe even 1 HP, and because of that, the Cade Claw will finish him off. You don't get to see that interaction all that often here. Bink says, we're going to have another equalization here, similar to map number 1, but this time it'll be already so early in this matchup, 1-1 going in around number 3.
Wow. Badger brings a really good point up there, and I got him to point that out. Cade Claw plus a breaching charge. Swifted's just, as he said, he's having one of those days.
Feel that.
I'm interested. I'm interested to see what comes next. What could possibly top a breaching charge and an electric claw? Swifted, please don't fall off the roof. Please.
That's a relatively common interaction nowadays. So you get to see that almost not every other broadcast, maybe like once every 2 weeks, I feel. That's a good estimate. Maybe once every 3 weeks or even a month, but still.
Or maybe don't die to a flashbang then.
Oh, that would be the real kicker there. I would have to agree with you on that one, yeah.
And you do have a point though. Although falling off of the roof used to be seen in every single round. If you've been around the scene long enough, you'd remember that resets used to be very common because it would bring you up to 50 health. That seems like so much thinking about it now, fellow. Wow. Where you basically say, yo, shoot me. Do you have a Twitch drone? Zap me with your Twitch drone. I need to get my health back up. And that would be such a big part of the round, making sure that everyone was either reset or ready to go into the site with that 50 health.
Old memories to reminisce upon. But moving into the now, looks like we have a trophy statuary defense by Achieve Esports, and they are going for that light extension. Once again, they want to hold the aviator/bar part of the map and maybe even go for some vertical kills, once again looking down through the main doorway leading up towards main stairs, but nothing to bear just yet. They still have plenty of an actual site presence, though. They could still deal with a master take if it does in fact occur here for SYR, which is what their main priority is, but I would like to see them not just go for this funnel-esque approach. I'd like to see them also apply pressure inside of Astro, perhaps maybe from the back stairs, on top of just getting master pressure too. That would definitely have a very fast attempt to clear out that Astro part of the map, and could definitely allow them to go for an easier site play later on.
It's just that give and get relationship that you see between the defenders and attackers. You could either push up for a hero play or push your utility a little bit farther up, and it could work out, or it could really just backfire in your face depending on how attackers are able to really pick things up. Eric, the first to fall, they did not have a chance to use their nitro, so that is going to be a nitro on the ground. Quick swing from Badger, they'll be able to recuperate and get a refrag kill, as well as Stewie with that DMR. Stewie has done a phenomenal job just grabbing heads and being able to tap them, but once again, refragged by SYR as this push through bedroom proving to be deadly, but ultimately going to net the advantage towards SYR.
Well, now that Badger has fallen, you could get Astro control. Things are looking much better for SYR overall, like you had mentioned. Still, could maybe have Stews try to get aggressive here. Opens up a better sight line to deal with anybody approaching from Astro stairs. But if they lose their life, that is a 1vx. And Mello, if that does happen to him, he is kind of in a rock and a hard space in the middle of statuary, having to deal with both Master and, of course, that Astro presence. Stews getting full flash part and will have to try to evade these next set of bodies. Can get rid of Rapid here. Spots at another near Astro stairs, but is not quick enough on the draw. Things equalize, though, do make things 10 times better. And now that we have both players pushing in from Astro, we could see a double cross peek attempted by Achieve, but as now that Mello falls, that is no longer an option, and it's just Stews trapped behind this blue box, hoping he can work for isolation picks. There's the hipfire shot. Naj, the only one left. He's low on HP. The pistol's out by Stews. Both one shot away from meeting their own doom, but with only 20 seconds left, this is a much more favorable position here for Stews, and he gets the job done with the pistol at hand. A 4K for the Aruni, and we have the round still favor Achieve despite the man deficit.
Stews will get it done. From those early round picks to get those refrags, they put themselves into such a key position. They held back, they rotated, they knew when to get aggressive. Was there a little bit of hipfire luck? Maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that Stews was there. He was in the prone. He didn't get aggressive. He didn't overswing, overextend, and especially once they were out of ammo, they didn't think, oh, this is the time to rush. Cool, calm, and collected throughout, and it completely broke up the two remaining attackers of SYR.
Yeah, I have to agree. Great aggression, knowing when and when not to swing. Same thing can be said for Badger as well. For example, he, instead of falling back into Astra, maybe holding the stairs with those toxic canisters, he instead actually moved back into closet, found a kill, and then wasted about 20 extra seconds on top of that with his smoke grenades. So a very risky decision, don't get me wrong, but it did eventually prolong that play for an extra amount of time, helping Achieve at least set up better to fall back and give up that position in both Master Bathroom and also Astra, funny enough. So it actually will be a round advantage here for Achieve as they now try to defend Kitchen and Dining Room. They will probably have some sort of heavy extension on that top floor. They've got the castle. They have those roamers of Dunny, for example. So they can fall back when needed to, but they still have plenty of general utility to at least have a couple of choke points on lockdown, and that could definitely weaken the clear by SYR, especially if they get caught off guard by something like a spawn peeper house by Dunny.
Well, Dunny, he had a 50-50 chance, but they're going to opt to go towards the patio area. Or the backyard, I guess you could say, of Villa. So weird saying backyard in any sort of map, because you see everything happen on the inside. But as you mentioned, Fellow, it is such a key point where if you were to just be able to delay that extra 20 seconds of time, and a big difference that you see is, are you going to be planning on losing your life or keeping your life? If we saw that, for example, I think you said it was Dunny who was playing the smoke in the closet. If they didn't use those toxic babes and they just died, they just outright died in that closet, that is a complete misuse of utility. But because they were able to hold it, that's what makes the difference in the round. Swifted now up to shut down Stewie. No more crazy 4Ks from them for this round. They're relegated to the bench as this push is just slowly underway, and I'm a huge fan of SYR's ability to just slowly cut off their sight. They know that they want vertical, and they know that they want to possibly go towards pantry stairs. With those two things in combination, it's all about information and time execution. Once they have control, it's about securing it. If they have that, they will be all set. Another kill from Vazdex will make that even easier. They're going to spring on into sight. There's the second for Vazdex, refrag from Badger. Another quick kill as Swifted will continue the momentum that Vazdex had just previously established. All of it up to Dunny. They're on the second floor, having to jump right on down into the line of sight of Naj, who we also saw on the second floor a second ago. Beautiful call on the side of SYR to just completely rush towards sight because they knew that they had an opportunity, and especially from Vazdex for making that opportunity even more available.
Yeah, that was really good capitalization there by SYR Esports, not only to get the first opening duel as a win, and then also notice how weak the site presence kind of was for Achieve. They were able to isolate once again, and the LMG versus the UMP45, if you're not going to hit that shot on the castle pick, then you're not going to win that gunfight at all. It's just such a challenging gun to deal with, especially when you have one of the worst guns considered in the game currently. So SYR Esports just outdueling their opponents, and kind of just picking up after that was more than enough to win on the tertiary pick of Kitchen and Dining Room. Heading back to Aviator and Games, though, we've kind of seen a mixed bag here. The first time when we saw more of a master clear by SYR, they were able to win this round with relative ease, but when we saw them try to go more or less for like that main stairs / study approach, things kind of fell apart because they never fully cleared out that roam game, and they also still had to deal with multiple parts of the map such as 90 and of course the vertical play not really bearing them any fruit. So I would much rather have them go for more or less that top floor clear instead, because that was such an effective way to get so much map control and an opening pick early on that it really did force Achieve to kind of run for the hills and try to always be back on the come up part when they were on such a huge deficit.
10 seconds to go.
I think we need to thank Nova really quickly just for capturing both of these cave claws from Eric. I wanted to see the second one, but I didn't know exactly where they were, and those are two extremely powerful claws because you are not able to destroy them from down below. Maybe the one inside a vault, but that's, once again, you're going to be using an explosive for that, and it's not a guaranteed way of actually disabling that claw. But regardless, I digress. A lot of early round gunfire. Vazdex on the Zofia trying to find Mello. And if Mello is able to stay alive down below, that could prove to be difficult as there is no longer a Zofia on the side of SYR. They'd have to be relying on the Rapid, or the Jackal of Rapid, to go down, find some footsteps, and either slowly track them down or to give that ping towards their team.
One interesting thing, too, as well, for having a 0 instead of that Nomad is you still could technically get flanked if no one's watching those Arctis cameras. So unless you have somebody dead or just actively watching that, there is a strong chance you still get shot in the back. So maybe if that clear in the middle floor is never attempted, then we could have that happen. So far, though, it's mostly people stacked up at 90 in red to have that common crossfire. And maybe if we have over-aggression without any utility, this could be problematic here for SYR Esports, but thankfully they're starting to throw out those concussive blasts. They're trying to disorientate Stews, as if they kill that top fragger this early on, things would really start looking beautiful for them. And that's exactly what happened. Stews will fall holding too much of an aggressive angle, and now it's the man advantage once again to favor SYRs, but not for very long, Banks.
Yeah, Eric doing a great job of knowing when to peek up and spray. All these operators are not waiting for the time to pounce, and Vazdex really assisting their teammate. They'll be able to take down Badger, and that's a lot of Toxic Babe smokes off the board. Although Finka is down, and that is the counter, those Toxic Babes do carry a lot of potency, as well as at least 20 seconds of denial. Dunny now taking up a more secondary position, giving themselves an opportunity to rotate down below if they see fit. But they have the drones. They have 6 drones still on the board, to be exact, and that is more than enough to gather information. With a minute remaining, Mello, as well as his comrades on the defensive side for Achieve, are in a very dire situation, a rock in a hard place, as you said earlier. Mello to swing in, not able to find the Jackal. Rapid to find a second frag. Dunny for the refrag. They're gonna have to find 4 on this round. Finding Naj, 2 more to go. Defuse is down. Vazdex spraying out. They have the LMG and they can keep on spraying, but no, it's gonna be the AK all the way from Study on the side of the Ace to actually find that lonesome Jaeger.
Just some slight aggression there for Achieve Esports, especially Stews falling early on instead of maybe falling back. And if they had a shield all the way near bookshelves, that could have been a longer angle you could contest with the M14. It's not a horrible idea to try to fall back, especially for a different team. You could have maybe had someone go into that 90 window, and that would have completely shut down Stews. We didn't have that happen, of course, but if that was a problem, then we still would have had Stews die early on, whether or not he was able to deal with somebody next to Boar, for example. So a little food for thought moving into another round potentially here for Achieve. They will not reattempt Aviator, of course, so they're going to be trying Trophy and Statuary, but they have tended to actually extend near Aviator and Games Room in the past, so we could maybe see that attempted once again. And if that happens, I would potentially prefer more of an earlier fallback or just slightly better team play, because we did have a refrag happen, but after that things did kind of get hectic for Achieve Esports, and they almost didn't expect to lose that 90 control in particular that early in the round when it looked to be Banks.
Yeah, you know what, John? I think you do have a very valid point there. And if you look at Achieve's defensive this round, they had to rely from a 4K clutch from Stewie last time we saw this site. Badger did a phenomenal job inside of Closet. But we need to see Eric, we need to see Dunning, we need to see Mello really come alive and either go for a clear attempt to delay time or a clear attempt to really disrupt and change the way that SYR is actually looking at the round. So on the side of a Mozzie, that would be either staying alive to the point where you're just constantly droning out to your opponents, or that would also be going down below and just saying, hey, you better clear me out, otherwise you're going to get nitro the moment you go for the plant. There's no shame in continuing to play a powerful position. One of my favorite clutches is probably, I think it was Canadian that clutched against TSM a long time ago when a Consulate was still in the pool, because they played Pulse down below and just waited for the right time to pounce.
Well, thankfully, depending on how effective Mello's anti-droning has been, he could technically do the same thing with Mozzie Pass, but based on his positioning, would take him a long time to rotate back down. But hey, he gets that first pick. I was going to briefly mention the element of surprise factor of having that Nook, but since she's already gone, I won't have to, and I guess I don't need to talk about the stall potential of Badger on the smoke, as he's also gone. A very fast trade happened here, as we're now on equal footing once again, with SYR still trying to clear out through the Master side, but as they now re-lose the man advantage and still have to worry about that Cade Claw, because like Hayat thankfully had a second in pocket and was able to break that Twitch drone, there hasn't been a lot in terms of progress made by SYR in this first half of the reaction phase, technically speaking.
Yeah, that could prove worrisome for later on in the round, especially with Mello being down below. But these frags, these little frags, like Vazdex being able to find their second onto Dunny, is what could make the difference. Now, Mello holding the time. They had a little bit of trouble with this in the first round of being able to find those C4s. And it will once again be just a little bit too early, prompting them to now go for the rotate up, as being down below does not prove any critical advantage. Vazdex to find a double. There goes Eric. Vazdex to find a triple now onto Stewie, and it's all left up to Mello on the rotate down. Vazdex looking for 4. They want to have their clip for the game, and it's clear why. They are just coming absolutely alive with this FAMAS. There's Mello. They'll find their double for the round, as well as their second for the game. This could be a huge clutch, but no, Vazdex wants it more. They'll get the 4K, as well as the round for their team.
Vazdex just that round running around and simply shooting people. I think he hopped in through Master and was able to firstly kill Badger, of course, and then he continued just to walk his way around in through Master side, leading all the way into Bathroom. Then Astro, he was just a well-oiled machine on that last round and did a ton of heavy lifting for SYR, despite the fact that it was a 4 versus 3, and really besides Vazdex just running around and making that space for his team, there wasn't much overtly achieved. But a 4-2 split is fantastic for the offensive side for Villa, and it really looks like this is a good reason as to why they wanted to go here. They seem incredibly comfortable with picking up on this map even when they're at a disadvantage. So moving on the defense, I feel like they shouldn't be trying to have as much trouble as they did in the past on map number 1. So it really is now going to be up to Achieve to try to pick up the pace and try to fix these mistakes we've been seeing constantly done by them, at least on their defense.
Yeah, I admire Achieve's attack from Cafe. It was really well done. It was a clear-cut formula that they kept on following, where it just mattered once they were in the building, you didn't have to worry about anything else. Achieve knew how they were going to clear it. They also had the ability to go vertical. The only round that they lost was the site that they weren't able to get vertical on. So that's where I'm interested to see how they react to Villa. It's going to be a lot more horizontal with the way they're set up, but perhaps we could see Stewie, Eric, or Dunny with those nades or impacts go down below, or I believe Mello as well. Yes, Mello as well has those nades. So that's 3 different sets of nades and then 1 set of impacts from Stewie. So it gives a lot of different options for how they go about this attack.
Well, I think with them starting off on the master balcony, they're probably going to want to go for that standard top floor roam clear. And you did mention the big emphasis on grenades. That could actually help get the hunting wall opened up, even against the K-Cloud. They just maybe throw it somewhere differently perhaps, or even ricochet it off on the top part of hunting wall to maybe bounce a certain way to kind of roll into pool table. That's like very geometrically challenging though, so it most likely will be just someone going around and study, maybe getting a kill hall opened up. But speaking of kills, that's a beautiful opening by Vazdex, shutting down Dunny and typing in a couple of Z's for good measure as well. A very funny way to start off their defensive round is they still have that opening pick, and Eric will try to have a cut-off angle established, but it doesn't really seem like Vazdex is all that worried, and he's actually trying to find himself a second pick. It won't be that Malusi to start things off with a second. Instead, Swift did get rid of Mello, and now it's a 5v3 favoring SYR on their first offensive round.
I don't think we saw a single adrenaline surge from Dunny, as well as a Gemini replicator from Mello. So that's a lot of missed out utility, as well as missed out nades on the side of Achieved. So they're going to be picking up the pieces, and there's a lot for them, or a lot to be desired really, of what could come from this attack. Vazdex still on the hunt, looking to find these remaining 2 players. Stewie's actually going to be the one looking to place a breaching charge, but beautifully read by, I think that was once again Vazdex down below, just proving time and time again to be the thorn in the side of Achieved's attack.
Still needing to work for some sort of pick here by Achieve Esports and having to worry about that potential flank with no Nomad on the board. Definitely a lot of issues here for Achieve Esports because they're at that 5 versus 3 and really haven't gotten all that much forward except 90 control and maybe having a chance to rush in through Skull doorway. They will be able to break that first shield and find some sort of frag, but it's quickly traded by Vazdex, so that's really not as much as what you probably would have needed. Stews and Eric D are now the last 2 for Achieve Esports, and they still need to worry about the mid-floor presence as well. There's just so many things that the offense has to worry about, and with only 40 seconds left on the clock, this is looking to be a very hectic situation for them to deal with, Banks.
It sure is. They have a lot to worry about, but they still have a few drones on the board that they can work with and will feed them just enough information that shield will finally be dealt with, as I don't know if the Sledge's nade just didn't connect. Regardless, a triple kill from Vazdex looking for another 4K. They will find it. Wow, Vazdex really coming alive, and they are once again sleeping in chat.
Man, a second 4K and in a row as well for Vazdex. This man is going huge on Villa. And I mean, that is really what that round just came down to, was SYR Esports getting those first 2 picks. And they actually still went for a fallback. They were rather aggressive to confirm a 5v3, but then once they knew they kind of overstayed their welcome, they were more than willing to go a floor lower, and then that became an issue for Achieve because they not only had to deal with the site presence, but also the small lurk game that was occurring as well by SYR. So that was just a solid way to open up on the second half, and they are getting closer and closer towards a map point. There is a strong chance that we see another map, the third and final one, in option here on Clubhouse, depending on how Achieve will play their cards in these next couple of rounds.
Uh-oh. It looks like we might have a team kill.
Oh yeah, Zombie, look at that.
You can't be reinforcing. Kill him. Kill him.
Well, it's reinforced pool, so is it that big of a deal?
I don't know. It can be protested, though. There we go. Thank you, Vazdex. Already starting off his kill with 1. We have the possibility of an overkill ace. I just want to throw that onto the cards. You could have a 6-kill ace right now from Vazdex. But regardless, highly unfortunate. I love that we do see a zombie in the lobby. A good preemptive to what we could see once they are out of that quarantine phase. Thorn coming out of the quarantine phase soon, if I am correct, fellow. But regardless, we don't need to worry about that yet, because we are now going to this round. SYR is going to be facing this at a 4v5. And it does look like Naj was the operator that would have been possibly that denial or even that roam, because there's only the Jaeger so far.
Definitely a huge morale booster there for Achieve Esports, already having a 5v4 without them having to break a single sweat. But there are still plenty of strong players that they need to worry about, in particular Vazdex, who has found 8 kills in the past 2 rounds, and even then he would still have an even KD despite all of those frags that we just saw earlier. So I would definitely need to have this guy as my main list of problems to deal with in this next round, and he's got plenty of util to stack up next to him as well, so this could be a very challenging position, if not for the fact that he was playing so close to Master, which is currently where some of the members of Achieve are trying to clear out.
Yeah, Vazdex has been using a really clear-cut principle of being able to pre-fire and knowing where to look. It's netted them a lot of kills so far, and it's not just that, it's just their ability to use and maneuver around different bits of information, spotting out 3 drones that might give them the hint that, hey, maybe they know a lot more than we realize. In combination with Melo's Ayana Gemini Replicator coming out, this could spell almost imminent doom, where you have these pushes constantly coming in, and that Gemini Replicator being able to spot out frost mats could give a telltale sign. However, Swifted will find the opening kill, refragged from Eric, as they know that they want to keep this man advantage. Pushing in, they have master bedroom control. They still have to worry about a possible C4 from below, but there's not going to be a single player from SYR actually holding it. Melo also taking control of bathroom, as this push is just starting to be underway. They need to spot out this frost, though. If they are not able to find Vazdex, that could be an absolute disaster.
Well, there's still plenty of grenades to maybe deal with him, and there's not a lot of general util to help out the lone Frost, except for a body of HPR, which isn't really considered utility. So maybe if they force HPR away, they will not check that back area. The concussive blast will go on out. There's a well-tossed grenade. HPR will still survive it somehow, leaving 2 defenders in the middle of Asher, but as Melo will go for that swing, the mute will now fall, and Vazdex will take his position. Rapid will catch one off screen, and it looks like Melo is completely aware of the Frost position, as Badger will catch the final one between Master and Statuary. It looks like we'll finally have a round in the books for Achieve.
Well played to a very big team. That man advantage definitely played a part, especially in that morale boost that you previously mentioned. But I want to highlight how once they took control of Master, it's not like they just stalled out. They looked at what their next task was. What's the next thing that we have to do? If we work backwards, we know that we want to clear astronomy, so we cleared out Master Bedroom. We have Master Bedroom completely cleared out. Player on astronomy repel, have them there early in the round. They have that constant pressure, meaning these players are not going to feel the need to rotate out because they feel important in that room. You're going to rotate away from something when there's attention elsewhere, where you feel like what you're doing is just not important. You had 2 players situated there because they knew that where they was where they were sitting was important. Nade first, Zofia stuns. There's no plausible way for both HPR as well as Vazdex to get out of there unscathed.
Don't really blame Sear for trying to reattempt this site. You could kind of chalk that up as well. We lost the first pick because we had a team kill our player who was on the Azami. So all that Achieve Esports really had to do there was play for the trade game, and the fact that they were just down a player throughout the entire round, Sear, it also just made holding down a lot of other angles challenging without having to get overly aggressive, which didn't favor them all that much. They can remain a bit more passive if they ever so please to, but it looks like with Vazdek's shield position, they might try to hold Master Bathroom for a fairly long amount of time, and then fall back into Astro, unless he changed his mind, which I think he just ended up doing. So we're not going to have a full extension into Master Bedroom. Instead, a more normal-esque kind of hold, maybe wanting to hold that statuary doorway for a little while longer instead. Still not a bad option, though. That can still waste plenty of time and resources by Achieve, which, in terms of drone resources, we've had them be very wasteful. I mean, look at this thing. They're already down to about 7, and we only have gone through the first 30 seconds of the action phase. Last round, we saw only 3 in total. That is a very big red flag, and it does make sense that they've been caught off guard by a lot of cheeky plays because they just don't have the intel to back it up. Like, look at that play by Vazdex.
It's been a while since, I think this is the most we'll even see from the basement, and it's from Vazdex going for an absolutely absurd run out and escaping with their life. Now, you could argue, hey, there's someone less on site, but because of all the utility, that gives Vazdex free information, free ability to rotate up. And it looks like they're going to be able to continue to do so as there's nobody down below. They can shoot with their shotgun, try to get up. Nice shot from Mello, however, that will even things out to a 4v4 as HPR now relegated to the bench. They weren't able to use their Nitro either.
Well, the shield inside of Statuary will finally get destroyed. Still might need to worry about getting parts of that hard wall opened up into triple, or at least some sort of kill hole, maybe even into Master Bathroom to help out with the Astro presence later on. Stews will catch one player with that LMG. Vazdex, your top fragger, is now gone. That's a huge net buff for Achieve. All they've got to do now is just take their time, get some players stacked up in either the window or back Astro stairs, and they could most definitely just brute force their way inside of Astro. Duddy catches one as well. Mello gets a nice headshot onto Naj, who is sitting in the back of Astro, and finally, it's Dunny yet again to kill the final player stuck in the middle of Statuary, and so far, these Statuary clears have been top-notch by Achieve so far.
It felt really, really clean, I can't lie, where they may have lost that early round pick, giving them the 4v5, but they knew where to look, they knew where to pre-fire, and most importantly, they knew that there was going to be a pre-fire coming out, where I mentioned earlier that Vazdex was using a phenomenal job of knowing where to look in pre-fire. But a lot of these players, when you go for a pre-fire, every single kill, the moment you start hearing shots, you're going to pre-fire just as much. And it gives a more of a give or take type perspective, where Achieved is now to push up. And a lot of the time, they were being the aggressor, meaning that it gave them the freedom to move and really net their picks in a way that favored their advance rather than a stall out.
We're seeing more now as well when we were on Trophy and Saturday, much more silence by Vazdex. In those past 2 rounds, he only got 1 pick, and that 1 frag, although very flashy, it did not last that man advantage for very long, and then he had to go reposition himself back in the site, and then he falled as he was trying to do that. So seeing more out of Vazdex on this roam presence will probably be a necessity here for SYR Esports to, at the very least, guarantee that man advantage, and that could definitely sway things to help them get map point rather than having things completely equalized, because now instead of having a 3-round deficit, we have Achieve Esports only a single round behind SYR, and there is a strong chance, if they're able to fully deal and isolate out Vazdex, that they could in fact maybe even bring things 5-5 rather than looking down the gun barrel of match point.
If I was on the side of SYR, I would be making sure, as an IGL, I don't know who the IGL of SYR is, but I'm very curious to find out. I would be making sure that I talk with Vazdex and say, hey, do you need someone to be assisting you? Do you need someone to be with you on that roam? Or is that lonesome warrior exactly what you are going for? Because unless you have that communication, unless you have that comprehension of what your team wants to be doing, then you're not going to be able to move things around. And it's going to come down to a lot of different highlight hero plays, which is not necessarily what you're looking for. Dunny possibly waiting for the call for either Naj or HPR to cook a nade up. Nade's going to hit the bar directly, meaning that all that shrapnel will not have any good surface to go through, as Vazdex goes for a very aggressive drop into Library.
We've got Badger getting that first blood. No one's aware of Vazdek's position, though, but just barely loses that fight inside of front enters. Does not at least find the kill. Not technically losing the fight. He's still alive. That does mean Achieve will still have this man advantage and are now aware of Vazdek's position. They've got a drone directly on him, and they're looking to try to flush him out, but no, Eric D will lose that first one. Now expecting one inside of the bathroom here, Vazdek's will in fact reposition, but thankfully can escape at just the right time with a very impactful kill. No longer having to worry about that grenade in the pocket of the sledge is going to be a huge net buff since there's only one left in the pocket of Mello. As they're trying to charge in for a push, they get rid of HPR. Now the man advantage back in the favor of Achieve, but there's still plenty to worry about in terms of the site presence, Banks.
Thinking of Impact, Naj taking a bit of damage from an explosive early on, and they're looking to make an explosive impact on the round. But it's going to be a matter of who's going to take the damage first. C4 and Nade will both be detonated as Mello will find their second onto Vazdex, leaving Rapid and Naj in a very undesirable situation. 4v2 though, which means it is salvageable. If they are able to hold these angles, isolate just a few pivotal picks, that could mean the difference. Rapid to find one onto Badger, but a triple kill for Mello now. They're looking to swing onto the site. There's just one more that needs to be found. It's going to be Stewie, as Achieve will even it out. 5-5 as Mello now sleepy in chat.
Well, the trade game there by Achieve was spot on. I think the only thing to really note that was a problem for them was maybe having Eric just push in through Mudroom a few seconds too early. If they maybe had a lifeline against Vazdex to force him back and then having both players push in from Bathroom and Mud at the exact same time, that could have been a much more efficient clear for Vazdex, but still only a 4 versus 4. Then we had Mello capitalize on a small opening, walked into sight, found a pick, rotated around, had the cutoff angle established in case somebody died from the study doorway, and it was just smooth sailing after that for Achieve. So now they've completely equalized, and now it's really any team's game at this point. Someone still has to get match point, but instead of that being a high chance for SYR, now there's a decent probability of either Achieve or SYR finding this next round, depending on how aggressive they can be in the early game and finding that first blood to boot.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, fellow. It's only been planes and games. That's the only site that SYR has been able to hold on their defensive end.
You would be correct, yeah, because it's been 3 rounds in a row for Achieve, yeah.
Yeah, so with those 3 rounds, you have to wonder you have momentum, as well as SYR now having to reattempt the same site over and over again. It does not bode well for them, and I do think that the attacking end now has a massive advantage because they have the different operators switch. They can go take whoever they want, whoever they feel is going to be the most essential operator. Now, that's 4 sets of grenades and 1 set of impacts from the Zofia. The explosives were really utilized last round, and it looks like that's going to be the exact same case, and the switch from SYR is going to be Vazdex actually switching onto the Legion. I can't remember the last time I saw him in play.
It's a good way to gather some sort of pocket information, especially when you have something like the Valkyrie on ban and you don't want to opt for bringing out the Maestro or, of course, the Echo, for example. Not a bad selection at all, and he does have the T5, which is an incredibly strong SMG, so I don't blame Vazdex for just trying to play off his own intel, work for some picks, and see what he can get away with. He also has backup by Swifted if needed. They're not too far away from each other, so they could play in tandem, perhaps. Eric losing a ton of his health already so far in his first minute. Still being alive, though. Those grenades are not going to be wasted this early for Achieve, as they're just about ready to fully clear out Swifted, but I don't think they're aware he's so close, and that will cost them 1 early life, and now 2. Swifted goes for a big play, and it works out to now bring the man advantage in the favor of SYR, but unfortunately, Mello and Badger are able to equalize.
That's a beautiful job being able to isolate early round. But with a 3v3 and the 3 remaining attackers being Ayana, Maverick, and Zofia, those are 3 operators that can get so much done. Information, hard breach, as well as soft breach. If they are able to maneuver around this map properly and get the right information, that could mean Achieved will be the team moving towards match point. But it's all a matter of how this information is countered from SYR.
Just about 70 seconds left on the board. Notice that shield all the way down in bookshelves. You've got to clear it at some point and maybe get hunting opened up. At least a kill hole would be nice to make sure no one's playing in that during the final execution. so at least the Maverick hole will suffice for that matter. Naj still playing in the back of Study, Rapid holding that back shield, and HPR as well looking down through Hunting, at least attempting to. All key positions here for SYR, and with nobody rotating around inside of Study, it's going to be a rather linear take attended by Achieve, unless they could maybe get rid of that shield presence by the player of Rapid, but no, looks like they're not able to. And ADS will catch that grenade. Rapid can now fall back into the site comfortably and maybe go for a late round swing if he ever so feels like it.
Final 30 seconds. Now these toxic babes, HPR has kept all three in their pocket just for this. Mellow to find the opening pick in this 3v3 though. And they'll be Rapid falling, leaving Bar completely vulnerable. Choosing the right hole, that'll be a triple kill for Mellow. They want to get this match point and they want it now. Mellow with the 4K! An absolutely huge kill and comeback from Achieved Esports, as SYR just unable to hold Aviator in games.
And I've really got to question Rapid for going for that swing. I get it, you need to work a pick, you know they want to push Bar, but from that position, it's incredibly dangerous. Maybe have your player all the way from Study, rotate to bookshelves, and go for a double swing to at least guarantee a refrag. It just seemed very odd to try to go for that take when you've already fallen back into sight. Maybe just hold from the bar top and instead just hold that angle passively rather than going for a wide swing like that. And that did in fact cost them the man advantage. Then Mello got to walk through the exact same rotate hole, except he came from the top of 90 through there rather than from main stairs the round prior, and he still found his 3/4K on the Iana, doing plenty on that entry roll, or at least the secondary entry roll I should probably say. And now it's series point out of everything for Achieve Esports. They just need one more round. And guess what, Binks? We're heading back to Aviator in games.
That is really concerning in my books. I've never been the biggest fan of going back to the same site because I feels like it's a lot of copy-paste from the defenders and a lot easier for the attackers to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And that's not to say that SYR has no chance in this round. They have a lot of opportunities. The fact that they were able to get it to a 3v3 and it took Mello coming up absolutely huge that round to be able to have achieved on this series point, it does bode well. And it's just a matter if you are going to be able to maneuver around and what type of defense, what type of switch are you going for. But we can't forget, we actually saw that Finca, I believe that was Dunny, that actually has their drone inside of sight. That is really scary to think about, that this information is already there.
I believe they've already been able to maybe locate what Vazdex has an option for them. We're going to break out that default camera through the little window, through the rappel. And it's still the exact same stuff being attempted here by SYR. Maybe they'll try to go for an earlier fallback because they don't want to get refragged perhaps, but they technically did find the first two opening picks. At least that was swifted on the Malusi, just sitting in an awkward corner that some teams tend to forget to look at with their drones. And yeah, speak of the devil, we've got swifted actually falling back early on, not wanting to lose their head just yet. Instead, Vazdex will be holding that position in trophy, but once he gets spotted, he'll just throw a goo mine and then retreat into 90. The proper call, as SYR Esports clearly don't want to get first picked and give Achieve such a hefty advantage when they're the ones sitting on match point.
I like it though, having Malusi and Legion, two time stalling operators. Those goo mines a lot easier to spot out. Dunny will be able to spot that Legion mine out, so that won't have as much of a time stall ideology. But regardless, we have the 5v5, we have the utility in the pocket, and we have Vazdex playing a very peculiar angle. There's no flank watch in the form of a Nomad, but it's going to come down to the dronesmanship, as well as if Vazdex is going to be able to outmaneuver his opponents.
Hello, thinking on maybe wanting to go for an Iana Gemini trick or just finding a better position to go for that reconnaissance, and now Dunny will maybe lead the charge against Rapid. They know he's here. No one's got near the 90 window. They'll just try to face him directly, and that will in fact cost them an early life here. Rapid able to get rid of Mello, such an important player that we saw in these past couple of rounds, is going to be forced just to be watching a flank cam in case that happens, and still having to worry about this back shield up and near bookshelves could be problematic, but they've got enough util to clear it, but at least this will give time for Rapid to fall back. And in the background, we've got Vazdex able to secure one, but at least he gets traded by Eric D. Still a man advantage, though, for SYR Esports.
I'm having a little bit of deja vu with how they're opening up Vault, but instead Swift is going to be able to find Dunny, bringing it down to a 2v4, favoring the defenders. With 38 seconds, this gives them very little options. You do have the hard breach, you do have the sledge, but it's not that same fragging potential that you have from having that Ayana, having that Sophia. Toxic Babe also in position. HPR once again doing a phenomenal job of just denying and holding onto their utility until the time is right. Eric getting lit up. Badger to find one onto Rapid. There's a second kill for Eric. HPR just holding his position. Swinging out with the Mossberg shotgun. He needs to find the kill, but Badger with the headshot. 7 seconds. They have to go for the plant. It is all down to this. Naj needs to get the kill, and he will find the head as well as time. We are going to see overtime as SYR is not ready to let this one go.
Scraping away by the skin of their teeth there, SYR able to bring us out of that plus 12 round regulation. It looks like we might head to a full 15 potentially, depending on how these two teams end up playing on out through overtime. But man, such a close call. And I feel as if we had Achieve Esports get somebody on that 90 window, we could have maybe seen that 90 corner presence altogether completely removed. And maybe if we had somebody go study as well, that could have been a very different round. But still, I cannot believe we had Achieve Esports just walk into bar, find 3 separate kills, and from a 4v2, bring it directly in a 1v1 where we almost had that as a victory for Achieve. Literally down to the wire, and Naj almost able to lose their life, funny enough. They still had the gunfight as a victory, but barely coming out on top there. I mean, this has been a much closer match, obviously, here on Villa in comparison to Cafe, but the fact we have seen so many close calls, not just only on that past round, but a few ones prior as well, just really goes to show the confidence of SYR Esports and the amount of issues we've been seeing by Achieve Esports as well in comparison to map number 1.
It is very clear that this is SYR's map pick to some regard, where you see it within their setups where they have that extra layering, but there's no denying, and I think we really break down that push in towards bar, where they were expecting it to come out, and it was very well played. I think it was HPR who was playing behind that bar, where they just had to stall out. They got the single frag, which was huge, but it's a matter of swinging with their teammates, where each and every single one of those frags, it was either covered or there was no option for the refrag, where it wasn't that 3 seconds. Even though you were in 3 second radius to be able to swing, there just wasn't that extra coverage that was needed.
Almost saw a spawn peek attempted there. Well, it was just noticed there by Mello. Thankfully did not die by Vazdek as he was trying to go for an aggressive peek near the art doorway. So at least we're not going to have SYR start off in the right direction just yet. But still damaging Mello, someone who's been very dominating on the offense. It's still something nice, and now you're aware they've got an Iana. They'll probably want to go for some sort of clear because they've got the intel of those Geminis. And that's exactly what's happening here by Achieve. They're trying to get establishment of mud and also the back area of kitchen. But wow, Vazdex, 2 big ones, and Naj joins in on the action as well. It's off the bat, the first minute, a 5-on-2 Binks with Achieve Esports just having no clue what just hit them. And it's Vazdek yet again for a quick swing near Astro to now make it all up to Badger in just barely over a minute.
1v5 from Badger, probably the easiest thing I've ever seen. Although they are going to have to contend with the fact that they are spotted out by Naj. If this C4 on the hatch works out, that could be huge, but that is going to tell them that he is aware of their location. Badger rotating around, they have this easy 1, and I think that's something that we can't forget, that if they are able to get this 1 relatively unscathed, that brings it down to a 1v4 with Vazdex already lit up. But we are getting too far ahead of ourselves. Naj still has the opportunity to end things here and now. Badger actually opting to leave the gunfight alone. They know that the pulse is going to have to come to them, but that is once again an information gathering operator, which makes things even more complicated.
Well, Badger's position well known at this point. They know he's falling back in art. He's already very low on HP. Vazdex is hungry for that potential 4K and getting a kill closer to a 20 bomb. But now we have Badger falling all the way back outside to go for most likely a tactical timeout and to technically not give like a full technical win for for SYR. They'll still get a win, just via the time, but besides that, at least this gives Achieve Esports to kind of talk over their problems, and I think it was how they set themselves up to go for that clear. I think they just jumped into it a little too quickly. They were kind of getting ahead of themselves, and they just weren't fully prepared for Vazdex on that Rome game. We've got Badger at least finding one, so a flawless round is denied, but it's still a round win overall for SYR. And that's all they need to be concerned about. They need to secure match point here in overtime to make sure we go to at least a plus 15 round situation, and maybe, just maybe, go to a third map as well.
15 seconds remaining.
Yeah, I think it really came down to them getting a little too aggressive. Goodbye, Vazdex. A little bit too aggressive with their first floor clear, where it didn't give them enough options, where they thought, oh, we're going to be completely fine going in here. That little bit of extra information was most likely needed to be able to properly scope things out, where they needed to know that the pulse was there, which the pulse was droned out, but I don't think they accounted for those two huge opening kills that Vazdex was able to get.
Potentially the final round here, if we have SYR wrap this up 8-6, and then we would head into the third map, of course, being Clubhouse, for anyone needing a refresher. This could be a very unfortunate situation to look at here for Achieve, because although they were technically 5-2 at one point, they have been able to claw their way back to match point, technically, and then having to go back into overtime because they just couldn't win that 1v1 against Naj. They're now back on the defense, which in this matchup in particular has been a relatively attacker-favored set on Villa. So this is probably not a sigh of relief, more or less a sigh of potential defeat here by Achieve, unless they play this matchup absolutely perfectly. If they're able to get that first pick, especially on somebody like Vazdex, who has been absolutely feeling himself, and if they're still able to have enough proxy to hold off that potential push leading in through Skull, because that's where we've seen most of these plays happen during these Aviator attacks, is everyone just going in through that master clear, getting control of outside of Skull, and then just working their way into sight through that. That's been the main approach by most teams, unless Achieve just need to walk into bar. Other than that, it's mostly just been that default play going for a plan side of B.
I really like your point on how it's more of a dangerous thing to be on the defensive side, where I felt notoriously Villa has always been more of a attacker-sided map, where not attacker-sided, more of a defender-sided map, where we saw the defense almost always coming out on top, and now we're still stuck at this planes and games, which I think we've seen the site maybe over 5 rounds now from the lack of defense actually being able to win it. I'm curious to see if that's largely in part to the fact we don't have that reveal phase anymore, or that these teams just largely favor the ability to gather information on the attacking side.
This has been the 8th time in total we have seen Aviator in play, and if we have Achieve win this, there is potentially a good chance that we might actually see it again, because SYR ended up going into Trophy last time around in case they didn't win this round. But they've already gotten rid of Eric. That's a huge opening pick for Vazdex once again. Like I mentioned earlier, he's trying to secure that 20 bomb and only needs one more pick. And with a gun like the LMGE, I am sure he's not going to have all that much trouble at least setting himself up in a manner where he could get that first pick. It's just a matter of if he can, of course, find it to make it that 5-on-3. But already having Achieve Esports have to play a little bit more passive because they don't want to have that 5-on-3 position is going to be very problematic. At least Dunny is able to find at least some sort of small opening to now bring us on a level surface, but still, it doesn't really seem like SYR Esports is all that phased, as they're still going for this multi-approach from both study, 90 window, and also the back of trophy/statuary.
This could work out properly for them if they are able to just maneuver themselves in a way that just cuts off any sort of rotation, and that's exactly what HPR did by being able to cut and find that head of Mello. Mello also being the top frag of Achieved does spell a little bit of doom for Achieved. They have to get a pick. They have to find a way to refrag. Otherwise, if they keep playing the trade game, I hate to break it to you, fellow, but we are going to be seeing SYR just completely walk away with it.
Just over 50 seconds left. SYR Esports still having plenty of map control. They're just waiting for that call to HPR to have him finally pushing through. He might get back up by Rapid as well to fully deal with main stairs and also 90 if absolutely required. There goes Dunny trying to sprint into study to come back to site, but HPR is still waiting with utter patience 4 versus 2 here. They just need to find Badger and now Stews. They're both located in the site, but a nade actually ends up blowing up into Swifted's body out of all players, killing himself in the process. And now it's a 3 versus 2. Still a better position for SYR Esports, don't get me wrong, but a 4v2 is definitely much more challenging to win in comparison to that 2 versus 3. And with only 15 seconds left now, this is honestly looking much better here for Achieve. They just need to find that pick on HPR. That's exactly what happened. Stews gets rid of Rapid. Now only Notch. He's got the super shorty out. Needs to win this gunfight against Badger, but cannot do it. We're going the full distance, Binks, and may or may not have been because of a glitch, but still, having that grenade detonate onto Swifted was immediately a red flag for SYR, and now they've got to play at least one more round to try to guarantee a third map.
Oh, that is insane. So, fella, what have we seen so far? We've seen a nade themselves. We've seen a team kill. We've seen, what were the other two? A breaching round, and then what was the other one? I can't remember, but
well, it
regardless,
was it was the Cade Claw, the breaching
Cade
charge.
Claw, that's what it was.
Yep.
Not stuff you see every single day. I've got to say, just one of those days. But 7-7, and I really like that initial attack from SYR, and it largely in part came down to the fact that they did push from almost every single angle, and I think for a good bit of that, it made Achieve feel like there was nowhere to run, especially when we saw the Jaeger die to HPR on the Ace. They pushed right on into Study, thinking, hey, if they're pushing from the other side, why would they be in Study? I can't understand that part. But they pushed right in, shift key down and everything. There's no way for them to get the kill. But the problem with an approach like that is once you get a few kills, 1 or 2, it breaks everything up because there's no further support. You've broken the line completely, and behind that line, there's no remaining player. There's nothing to reform and recreate any sort of offense.
Biggest problem that Achieve Esports has definitely faced when attacking this site in particular is just how linear they like to approach it. We have not really seen all that much pressure in Study, for example, when they go to clear out Master side. They don't have anybody on 90 window. They just face their problems head on. And sometimes it's not a bad idea if you got better weapons and a better position overall to win those gunfights, but not having that insurance policy and not having more than one direction to go from can lead to a lot of issues, especially on the attack. And I think because of that Achieve, they don't want to just all commit for that master clear. It looks like they'll go for more of a bottom leading upward clear like they have done in at least one round that I can recall when attacking Aviator, where they deal with this roam game inside a living room. They go for a couple of nade kills potentially via that vertical play, and then they just work their way up from both Study side and main stairs, pardon, not master stairs. So if this does work out, more power to them, but still having to maybe worry about that flank game later on could be an issue. And Vazdex, of course, will always be that issue, especially in the defense, but not for very much longer. He may find that 20 bomb, but only that one kill will be to his name on this 15th round.
That could make an absolutely huge difference. Vazdex only getting one. We've seen them go absolutely berserk, but that's not to mean that SYR is out of it yet. Every single player has demonstrated the ability to really show up. This shield being dispatched quite early in the round. It proved to be a thorn in the side of Achieved in previous rounds, but that will be dealt with. Naj holding behind Study desk will be able to net them the kill on Tamello. There goes your information gathering operator, but not to worry once again, because you have almost 7 remaining drones on the side of Achieved.
Unfortunately, with all those drones, they did not check for the wrap position that Naj was holding, so SYR will once again come out on top for the time being, of course. Still need to worry about these sightlines for a tad bit longer, but eventually Achieve Esports will have to fully commit to this top floor and go for more or less that Study side approach. HPR, though, already spending 1 toxic canister rather early, but that's just to make sure they can get that reinforcement applied onto the rotate hole, which has been something that Mello in particular has charged through a numerous amount of times. Thankfully, with him being dead, though, and that wall being reinforced, that's not going to be a problem, as all that SYR Esports have to do is just basically stop this Study doorway play and maybe one potential rotate around inside of the bar hallway. But look at that play by Stews to now at least bring things once again in an even position. That LMG just working wonders to now put us in a 3v3 with 40 seconds left.
We see the fire all around because the Goyo was actually brought without the shield. So we don't know where all the other ones are, if there's even any remaining. But 30 seconds, HPR has 2 Toxic Babes in their pocket, and we know that they're going to use them to great proficiency to deny. HPR also most likely playing in a position that will allow them to use that that Mossberg shotgun to great effect. Sophia Stan's coming out, and that's a double kill for Stews. There goes Naj, as this push into sight is just about to commence within these dying seconds of the round. Swift to find one onto Eric. Now down to a 2v2. Stu to find 3, but it's down to the 1v1. They have to find Swifted, and with 1 second, we are going to be seeing a map 3 as SYR holds on.
Once again, all down to a 1 versus 1 with the timer just not favoring Achieve Esports. And again, I really gotta wonder about their intel game. They had no idea that Swifted was inside a skull door watching for that aviator push. I really find that hard to believe. That's such a common position to hold, especially when you have more of that study side approach. And once again, the lack of rotations by the offense side of Achieve, it was non-existent. They didn't have anyone try to creep their way up to 90 to alleviate that pressure from Skull. They just kind of funneled in essentially, and that costed them once again the round, and now the map altogether. There actually is a chance for SYR Esports to bring us into a victory favoring them, depending on how well they play on Clubhouse Figs.
Clubhouse will be an interesting map for both of these teams because we didn't actually see Villa show us all of this different ability to go completely vertical. We saw the nades used quite well vertically, but I think when we go over to Club, especially with those basement sites, or the basement site of Arsenal, we're going to see that horizontal and vertical in unison once again like we saw over on Cafe. So very interesting to see how that turns out. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be taking a short 5-minute break, and when we return, it's going to be Clubhouse, our final map.
'Cause you know me better than anyone by far. But no one makes me feel less alive. We're fighting fire. The way you push my buttons just right. We're fighting fire. When 2 voices of nature collide. We're fighting fire. Can't help but feel the temperature rise.
devil in a red dress. Call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess. Bang, bang, got my hand on the trigger. The devil in a red dress. Call 911, I'm a killer. You know I hate to confess. Bang, bang, got my hand. Call
We've made it this far, Binks, and now it all comes down to Clubhouse between Achieve Esports and SYR Esports. My name is Fel, also joined here by, of course, Binks, once again, in case you need a quick little reminder. And yeah, this matchup, it's definitely developed over, especially Villa in particular. We saw a very one-sided affair on Cafe, and then things turned all the way down to a 15-round matchup with SYR Esports, once again, having to barely come out on top in a 1-versus-1. What's your takeaway as we move into our third map, Binks?
I think that both these teams have both strengths and weaknesses that they do need to work on, and it's just a matter of, will Achieve be able to work through those strengths, or will it be SYR being able to push through those strengths and weaknesses? And one that I really want to talk about is that adaptability that we saw from both teams. I think a really good instance that you pointed out in the very late rounds of the previous game would be, I think it was not Naj. It was on the side of SYR where we actually saw them reinforcing. The smoke did actually reinforce the wall leading to Bart because of how many times it almost cost them the round. So those little adaptations of understanding how your opponent is thinking and constantly putting yourself in their shoes is what's going to make a difference for this game, and being able to work beyond just the confounds of your own team.
And another thing I mentioned quite a lot for Achieve was their lack of rotation. They wanted to go for just a lot of heavy funnels. Never did we have them try to go, for example, when they went for a study take, we didn't have anyone try to go up red stairs, try to go deep into 90 to go kill anybody that was Skull, or have a double attack leading in through the back of Aviator to have both doorways on lockdown for the offense. No, that never happened. We also never saw anybody rotate into study when it was more or less a master kind of clear for the offense. And that just didn't sit well with me, because you do get a lot out of moving into those positions. We saw SYR attempt that quite a lot. They had cutoff angles. They were catching roamers retreating back to site because they had HDR in the middle of study, for example. And it also weakened the presence of 90 as well, because they already had that in their back pocket and no one could sit in the back of shelves because they had main and study pressure. So if we see better adaptation and better late round play style by Achieve that isn't them just running into sight and having someone like Mello or their play with the LMGE just win their gunfights, then I would be much happier with them overall, and they might be able to get an actual win in the books, because one of the major reasons why they didn't win a lot of rounds on Villa was because they hard stalled and they only had one place to come into, and that was basically just a bottleneck where SYR were completely ready for that.
Yeah, especially on Clubhouse, it's going to be a nice little pleasant mix of what we just previously saw of both Cafe and Villa, where you have the horizontal and vertical. But Bands, I'm hoping to see a little bit more of versatility, but Thatcher first to go. This leaves SYR in more of a power position because it's been achieved to ban out the Flores each and every single round. So this is going to change things up. Will it actually be a different ban like the Habana? So that's very common here on Clubhouse to have both Thatcher as well as a hard breach. That means that Maverick is still going to be on the board, and most likely the hard breacher of choice for a lot of these attacking teams. SYR the first to do so, and Valkyrie banned out again. And I'm quite questioning, I question the Valkyrie ban a lot of the time, just because I understand how powerful that information is, but with camps not being able to throw it outside, it just seems like there could be better options, especially this late in a BO3 where you have so much information on your opponent.
Looks like that Omai will still be banned, though, like he was on map number 2, so that's not going to have to be that big of a problem for either Achieve or SYR Esports. Lisa does have the Mira available, too, which she's actually relatively viable on Clubhouse, so maybe we could see her, especially for a church defense. Yeah, so Stews will insta-lock that. That way you can have a mirror window watching, for example, the bottom of main stairs. You can throw a nitro self in that position if you're watching the triple wall, and then you can also have a mirror window watching into blue, whether that be from church, which is kind of an awkward place to have it, or you just have it near dummies, is normally the call out there in the back of Arsenal room. So that way the two secondary pushes you see from all of attacking teams are being guarded by that mirror window. So a nice little set of insurance will be nice for Achieve, but they still want to go for most likely that roam extension on the top floor. They've got the Alibi, Mozzie, Mute, and a Castle, so they are going to be trying to guard all the floors here in Clubhouse for as long as they can.
I think that's with good reason, where that's something you have to be really aware of. So, interestingly enough, the initial operator selection on the side of SYR is largely focused on both hard breach as well as information, but it is only the Twitch that is being used for information here on the side of Vazdex, and we saw that F2 used extremely potently by them as well. So with the extension, I'm curious to see if we're going to see that SYR is going to opt more to go straight towards the site, or if they're going to be still putting that needed emphasis on actually going for a full roam clear.
Would probably make sense for SYR to try to most likely go for more or less that roam clear. That way they would have an easier time going for the hatch play, because they still have an ace, which is not too difficult to get most of those hatches opened up so long as there is no impact trick, which I don't think that's what Achieve have in store this round. And they also have the Maverick, which is great for getting the bar hatch opened up if it's required. Because of this extension, we actually have some of the hatches opened up so we can have a fallback early on. But look at this rush attempt by Vazdex. It's completely shut down by Stews, but that's an incredibly hilarious way to try to start off your round here for SYR Esports. And it looks like we have Swifted maybe attempting to do the exact same thing, but he'll have to fall back and now move back up to garage as the rest of his team is already beginning to die, and so will he. 5 versus 2 off the rip for Achieve, as that rush play just did not work out at all for SYR.
Fellow, for a brief moment, I thought we were still in the prep phase, but the moment I saw Vazdex hit the ground, all of the hopes of a slow, methodical push went out the window, and Rapid, just sitting here inside a site, does not have defuse, is going to be able to find a second one, just constantly maneuvering around, but that's the problem with footholds. It's hard to see the head of your opponent, as Mello will make great use of them. As HPR taking to the roof, possibly just to talk to their team or go for the rotate, but a tactical timeout after that one is probably needed to basically slow things down, especially when you start things with a rush. You have a tendency to wanting to keep on pushing aggressively, and slowing your team down is exactly the type of push you're looking for.
Well, not much really discussed here. I'm at number 3 with a rush, so it looks like HPR will, instead of going for a timeout, will just try to go and work some picks. Don't really blame him for that, but everyone seems to be watching for this push leading in through dirt, but only the UMP actually, so he'll survive that first engagement. Losing a bunch more HP will now allow Dunny to get that final pick, and there we have it. The rush not working out really at all for the offense, as Achieve will just take that first round in strides, but it is only the first round, so nothing much to be concerned about here for SYR. I doubt they'll reattempt going for that rush play when Church is back in play for Achieve.
Interestingly enough, we're going to see Gym and Bedroom as the second site choice for Achieve, and this has been a lot more common within different T3 all the way up to T1 teams, because of the proficiency, and that Gym Bedroom starts to feel a lot more viable, especially when you go for an extension and you know the type of hold you're going for. Mira is in play, so I'm interested to see that they are not being selected, as there's some very key Mira windows either inside a bathroom or even holding in logistics towards construction, or even logistics into bedroom. So interesting operator selection, but I think it could still very easily work out in favor of Achieved if SYR is not able to isolate those different angles.
Definitely don't hate the options here for Achieve at all, but does seem odd that since they are still going to want to extend into CCTV and cash room, that they don't bring out a castle as well, because that does allow even more time to be stalled, and it does force more utility as well out of the pocket of SYR. Even a Aruni as well wouldn't be that big of a problem as well. So many windows on this top floor. You could be very versatile with those Syria gates, but neither one are going to be on the board. Neither that mirrored like you mentioned, but still, the lineup for Achieve is not bad. They have some light information and hard intel as well. Both the Banshees and Evil Eyes are an option, and that surprise element of Stews on the Frost could maybe catch somebody off guard, especially if we see a hard stall by SYR Esports and they just forget to check underneath them if there's a bear trap waiting for them.
What I like about frost mats like that is you have to clear everything before pushing it. You could try to go for the repel, and maybe if they weren't placed properly or they're placed in a position where it's visible, but even when you flip upside down, you have to worry about that CC window, which basically causes a lot more area that now the attackers need to clear out. When you take away the options for pushing from the attackers, that's where things get really scary. And Nova now highlighting to us the fact that we haven't even talked about Naj taking that blitz.
Definitely wondering how effective that pick may be, but it would also depend on how exactly he wants to use it. You can maybe use it to quickly clear through the extension into cash room, perhaps. Maybe you want to rush through Jacuzzi wall once it gets opened up. Naj might opt for the latter because we were just barely able to catch him actually working his way towards the area of Jacuzzi, and then maybe he'll just run in through, try to flash somebody with that shield, and just try to get some sort of pick, or at least make a bunch of space, because a lot of teams will run away in fear of that blitz player, allowing a bunch of space to be made for SYR to maybe get that site presence and maybe try to apply a plant perhaps early on, but so far they're not really going to find all that much success. It's Stews to find that opening pick and Eric to respond immediately after.
Also, great suppressive fire. Vasquez getting caught off guard, having to take out the P9 pistol. Not able to find anything. They'll have time to reload that FAMAS, but they know that they are now cut off, and it will be a quick clean as it's a sea of blue from Achieve to take their second defending round. And you have to wonder, there was no way. I think the most they pushed into sight was actually in through construction, and even then Vasquez was cut off from the lack of a flank watch.
I think having mostly just that Jacuzzi presence was nowhere near enough for SYR Esports. They did have, of course, Vazdex just slowly lurking around in cash, which is great. No one going main stairs, though, or Logi for a late rotate, or even anyone out on the main balcony, I believe, either. We couldn't quite catch it, but I was almost guaranteed that we didn't have anybody near that whole like highway balcony system. So definitely seemed odd that we had more or less a funnel by SYR, which is a problem I mentioned a lot to Achieve. And funny enough, last map, SYR were great on their late round rotations, but so far they have not really shown a lot of value in terms of wanting to go for those late round rotations, but it has only been 2 rounds, and one of those 2 being a rush, so I'll give them benefit of the doubt. Maybe they'll change that this time around, going into cash and CCTV as a bomb site, which you kind of need to pick between rafters or construction once you get that plat wall opened up, so a rotate at some point is a necessity for attacking this site properly, Banks.
I'm interested, I really am, to see if SYR is going to be changing up the type of attack they're going for. Because it seems like there isn't as much of an idea with what their plan is. And interesting enough, do you know if that mute jammer actually covers the wall down below? Because it does look like it's placed in a way that is its intention. But
well,
I'm not positive. Yes.
Yeah, it has a dome kind of feature, so yeah, it can get at least the top parts of the wall, which are normally the parts that are opened up as an attacking team to have that sight light all the way down on the window of rafters. So yes, that will deny parts of the wall, but not all of it.
A bomb has been located.
Very good to know. Now with 2 minutes and 30 seconds remaining, Maverick already going towards that wall, especially with those Cades. Electricity does not affect the blowtorch, and it's actually going to be SYR getting the opening frag this round, and that's going to be Eric off the board. I don't even think they're able to cook out their nitro. So great opening start, and it frees things up, because if they are able to take control of the garage, and it seems like that might be the job of Vazdex now pushing in from lounge to garage, they have to contend Stewie, who's pushed all the way into oil, and a great extension from Bazzer will ensure that Vazdex is relegated to the bench.
We got Swifted finding their second. Good stuff so far by SYR, besides losing to Badger, who just wide swung on the smoke pick. And now eventually he'll fall by the hands of Rapid. 2 versus 4 once again. This time SYR are actually in the advantage. Stews gets aggressive with the SMG-11, but is only that mute player left to stand, as Dunny will get dropped to the ground. Technically that 1 versus 3 Adrenaline Surge will get popped, and now that's the third for Swifted as he finishes off Dunny, now leaving Stews 1vx, catches the head of HPR, but still a long way to fight for, and only having that shotgun SMG, no nitro cell left in the pocket unless it's been pre-placed currently to maybe detonate on a default plant. He'll most likely have to get aggressive, hold these rat angles, and just try to win his 1-for-1s. I don't think there's a proper stack up just yet out inside of Raptors. There's 1 for Stews, 3 overall, whips up the shotgun, has got to play close against this player, hopping through the window, and Naj will fall. Oh my goodness, how do you let Stews get away with this? A 4K for the man, as we still have a round come out as a victory for Achieve. SYR, what just happened?
Why would you push in that case? You need to play so much slower, especially if you have the time to drone out. I'm not sure why we saw 2 players situated in garage when you're able to rotate to have that cross angle, but ultimately I don't understand the choice to jump in through, especially when you know the Mossberg is going to be out spraying. And I know that doesn't seem like prime Mossberg shooting distance, but when you ADS and you're looking, you're within that proximity, spraying down your opponent will work. I think the lack of cover, I don't understand, and I would imagine that there's mayhem in a Discord call if that's the type of chaotic push going on.
3 rounds in a row for Achieve as Stews is somehow able to pick the literal perfect moment where the Finka is caught off guard expecting a flank through Swamp, and now forces the 1 versus 1 where Stews is just in that range to get a crisp 1 pump with that Mossberg. Man, that has got to be such a big demoralizer there for SYR Esports. Looks like they are going to have to go up against Church and Arsenal once again, and I am really expecting they do not go for the exact same rush, leading down blue / secret stairs, leading into sight, and try to go for that sort of cheeky maneuver, as it completely failed the first time. And they still have a really good setup to go for more or less a standard top to bottom clear. Only thing they might need to worry about is their communication in the latter end of the round, as we have a big emphasis on this anchor presence by Achieve, and if there's just too much utility to handle at the exact same time, that might force SYR once again to go for more or less a funnel and not really get the map control desired to have that proper execution.
So as previously mentioned and seen, we saw a rush from Vazdex as well as his comrades in towards this site. Really glad to see that they are slowing things down and using that little bit of utility that is very much needed. But lots of drones this time, and I mean that in the sense that we have both a Twitch and Flores in play that could be used to really disable any sort of Jaeger play or the Mira or even the Malusi and Mute if you are able to position your drones accordingly. Interestingly enough, fellow, it seems like SYR are setting themselves up in a position to just explode onto site. I don't see them going for anything short of that, where they want to have that crazy influence, but the C4 being prepped is possibly going to connect with Rapid if detonated at the right time. Just waiting it out in a beautiful delay and wait from Eric just to have the information that is given from Sledge's breaching hammer. That's going to be the opening kill now for Achieve Esports.
Great patience by the new player out of all people. And we have that Selma detonating, at least for now. The hatch will momentarily be opened up. Vazdex takes a good moment to walk down main to at least equalize, and now is able to find yet another. They keep running into this Twitch player next to main stairs, and that actually grants, the advantage for SYR once again. And now all they're looking to do is just find a perfect moment to drop down that hatch and still have Vazdex watch this cutoff angle. And now as Stews tries to get aggressive, he may not fall just yet, but Dunny gets caught off screen. And now things are looking quite horrible once again for Achieve, unless we have someone like Stews or Badger go big in these next 50 seconds.
Well, we know Stews has done it previously in this game as they're 7-0, but that is a lot to ask. Stew to find Vazdex, Badger rushing right back into sight. Funny to think that is going to be the defense doing that, but they've gotten themselves into a very strong position sitting behind that gun locker, meaning that the moment Swifted chooses to drop or even HPR, they will know and be able to combat it. Droning out, they are not able to find Badger, and we're not sure because the drone has been cut off, but there's the ping onto the smoke. They know exactly where. Spray out, Badger will fall thanks to Naj, and it's all left up to Stew to clutch once again, spraying to the Maverick, but no, Naj will be there to calm, cool, and collected to find the head, and Sears fight back 3-1.
Pretty good aggression that time by SYR, and having Vazdex able to almost completely clear out the back of Church, essentially. The only person who he was not able to find was Stews, but I loved how SYR Esports, because of that, they took their time, they understood how powerful the crossfire could be to counteract the drop, since they had nobody pushing Dirt Tunnel. They instead waited, they had Naj to go in the bottom, or Naj, I should properly say, go down the bottom of main, make sure that Stews could not aggressively swing through Moto, for example, or at least comfortably fall back in through Church to have that drop down angle on the hatch. They were able to also isolate out the smoke player, I believe it was, of Badger. So that was great coordination by SYR in the last 50 seconds of the round, just to really guarantee that in the 2 versus 3, they still came out on top. So their first round finally in the bag. Looks like Achieve Esports will try to re-attempt to go to this basement floor with a fairly similar lineup, except this time around they actually have the Kaid for that hatch denial, which I'm definitely a big fan of. That can stall the kitchen play 10 times more, and especially since you're going on an anchor game, that roam presence is going to be basically non-existent, so you need at least something except those nitro cells and maybe a few impacts to stop the hatch from being opened up.
And that could really help them out. And I didn't notice it last round, and I wanted to make sure, when we saw the singular ace Selma breaching charge thrown onto the hatch, was it Naj that actually finished it off with his breaching torch, or was it just a second Selma breaching charge?
It was another Selma charge, actually. He had,
okay.
multiple thrown out.
Yeah, I just wanted to see, just because there is that health points on the hatch, meaning that if you throw an ace charge, then now it takes half as much of the breaching torch, because ace's charges do half. 2 of Hamana's pellets do just as much, and same with thermites, where just as much as you need. And then with the hard breach device, it actually does, with 2 charges actually touching the hatch, does just enough to open it up.
A nitro cell play could have maybe worked by Eric, but he had a bit of remorse and instead fell back and almost died to Vazdex as he was on a very greasy upset and repel angle to try to stop that cutoff. But thankfully Eric only loses about half their health. It doesn't actually die. So at least that's something to be thankful for Achieve Esports. And now they have somewhat of an idea that they might have a rotate in blue later in the round. But so far for SYR, looks like they'll still go and try to get some coverage in dirt, maybe open it up with the Maverick blowtorch, and then try to get pressure established inside of kitchen. Last time that wasn't too big of a problem. They only had to worry about 1 nitro cell as the impact trick didn't even work out. And now that there are no impacts on the board at all they need to really worry about is A, those nitro cells, and B, the Kaid Claw in terms of just breaking that off by probably a well-tossed grenade. Or that works too.
Oh, what was that?
That was, I guess, an ace trick next to the actual soft flooring. That was a good way to counter the Kaid Claw.
Yeah, didn't think about that one, but clearly these players know something that I do not. What a surprise, they're the ones playing the game. Regardless, a still very strong hold from Badger within Dirt Tunnel. It will almost completely shut off Naj, but they are not backing off just yet. They clearly are waiting for any sort of push to come in from their own team, and it's just a matter of when that will be the case. Taking a lot of damage from this Toxic Babe will finally be able to disperse that shield, but that does not deter Badger, who's actually going to be pushing up. Meanwhile, Eric will be able to take down Vazdex, but is downed within the process over on the side of Church. They'll be revived right back up, and with a minute to go, SYR in a very, very tough situation.
Could be worse. They could potentially be actually in an even worse deficit, perhaps, and now things are no longer in a disadvantageous position because Badger did not expect that close quarter proximity despite the fact he has a shotgun and SMG-11. 30 seconds remain, and Mello is still holding quite close, having those far back angles to maybe work with. Dunny will now fall out by the hands of Rapid. He's still making a ton of headway in the back of Dirt, and now Mello has to aggress to at least make sure the Sledge player cannot find any more, but it doesn't work out. A 3K for Rapid. Eric D finds one near main, make it another one. A 3K overall for the Mute as well. HPR swings into action. They need to get this plant down, and they only need to worry about the Mute player who has to now traverse in the opposite site, and Rapid's there at the ready behind the tall box. 4 for the Sledge, and we have a second round in a row for SYR Esports.
I was not expecting that, and that came from their persistence within Dirt Tunnel. And just, I think Achieve did not want that Dirt push to come out because it really split all of their utility in half. It didn't give them the option to rotate right on around. And we cannot forget to mention Rapid, just their ability. I believe almost all of those kills were headshots, if not 3 out of the 4. where especially when you're using the LA, where it's not that high fire rate that you're looking for, it's more that heavy hitting damage that you have. Hitting that head is a little bit harder, but it's just a great use of utility from SYR, and Achieve just not being able to hold on for that extra little second for that plant.
Also, maybe preferred having Badger fall all the way back into church, perhaps, to maybe utilize those smokes across the map to deny a plant. That could have been something very interesting to see. But we've had this guy be very aggressive and just in-your-face kind of play style throughout most of this game, so it would seem odd to have him just change that on a whim for no general reason.
No.
Oh, you hate to see that. Mello just walked right in front of Badger. He's going for the rotate into Logi. That's not what you want to have happen. You could maybe get reset to like 20 health, but we might not even have that happen. So maybe Mel will just go for some sort of run out maybe, or just, I don't know, be on cam duty already, even though he's still alive. You hate to see that.
It does look like they're going to go for... Whenever you get lit up to that amount of health, you're really looking to go for more of a rat play, where you're trying to be really just caught off guard, where they don't have an opportunity to look and shoot at you. So Mello in that position, that still leaves a lot of different areas. It means that the players on the side of Achieve that are not Mello, who had that full bit of health, are going to have to just pick up the slack that much more, especially as the Logi push comes out. Stu could go for the C4 toss, but we've seen Achieve be a lot more tamed when they actually choose to go for these things, where they want to take it a lot slower. They will quickly disperse of any sort of mute charge that is on Jacuzzi wall, which means that the Selma breaching round will also be successful. But Eric has the mirror, which was not previously taken by Achieve, which they will now opt to take here on the side of bedroom, which will help them really deter this push, because there's no way for them to get around unless they get that Twitch drone in there.
Last time we saw Jim Veteran play, it was a blitz attempt by SYR, heading in through Jacuzzi as quickly as humanly possible. This time they are, like you mentioned, going for a much more methodical approach. They aren't going to win that first gunfight, though. Stews will out-duel Rapid, someone who is a very big challenge on the 5th round, but is no longer alive here to worry about in this next minute 30. Now having someone else to maybe go in through Logi to deal with Stews properly, that could lead to less of a presence across the rest of the map here for SYR Esports. Honestly, that first blood having tons of impact already, and that could completely stall out SYR Esports depending on what they're able to get away with in these last 70 seconds.
And try to use that Flores drone. It will be the C4 from Badger to actually find the kill onto Vazdex. Naj also able to find Stu with a minute remaining, not having man advantage. They have a lot to be desired, and we still haven't checked in on our friend Mello, who's lit up down to a sliver of HP, who's just constantly playing down below, trying to find that cheeky little angle. And it looks like they're going to be the one going for the flank. Whether or not that will be able to find them any kills, because there hasn't been anyone pushing up, and they have that Mira still situated inside of Logi that is now finally being dispersed by that Flores RCE Retero drone.
I've got Badger playing close with the shoddy. That could be damaging if Naj tries to overextend himself. Spots at the mute, but cannot shoot a single bullet in time. Still a minute advantage here for Achieve. They've only got 20 more seconds to kill. Swifted in the middle of bedroom, not having any proper help by HBR. He's in a very far position of logistics, as Swifted tries to make the space inside of Jim, but no, gets caught at a bad time by Mello on the flank. He may find one. Not a second, but Badger is there at just the right time. Once again, sitting quite comfortably at the top of main to get that final pick of the round and not have things go into a 3-on-3. Instead, it's 4-2 for Achieve, keeping that advantage moving in the second half.
That's a really good split, especially considering they're on the defensive end. Especially on Clubhouse, you normally hear and normally see a 4-2 split. That is normally what's expected for the defensive end. But especially considering that Achieve did have that flawless or perfect cycle of those 3 consecutive rounds at the start of the game, really propels them a lot farther within their first half. But what I'm looking for from SYR on this defensive end is their ability to, one, stop the information from Achieved, as well as stop them from getting into key pivotal positions that's going to allow them to cut things off. So what I mean by that is the vertical play that we saw all the way back on Cafe. You don't want them to be able to establish key vertical positions for any sort of arsenal push that they are going for. If you are looking towards their information gain, you're looking to make sure those mute jammers are in key pivotal positions. It doesn't look like they're going to be taking the Twitch, so you can use that massively to your advantage within that denial of, if they don't know where we are, we get to have the jump on them.
Pretty decent first half for Achieve Esports. Nothing too much to be upset about, though, by SYR. This is technically default, although nowadays you tend to see more 3-3 splits, but 4-2 is better than, of course, 5-1, or even worse, the 6-0, the fatal complete loss out in your first half. So there's still plenty of hope for SYR to bring things back on their defense. But like you mentioned, there is a lot they, of course, have to worry about, especially when they're going for more of an anchor-based hold that could give a lot of map control away for free for Achieve. And if they have a lot of time to kill, they could really set themselves up in almost a perfect position to get that execute fully underway. Speaking of Achieve, though, they are actually opting to go for more or less an oil pick push, perhaps, and then maybe working their way downward from the blue side. That's always a very interesting place to go for first off the bat, unless you're going for a rush, which, based off the lineup by Achieva, I don't think they would prefer to go for a rush, Pinks.
Thermite is not... Thermite, Ace, and Maverick, actually, are not really the rushing style of operators. They're normally the ones that you use to really open up as many lines of sight as you can think of. But it seems like this garage push is just more of a gateway towards a full clear of the second floor, which will show that almost, if not all, the players on the side of SYR are down on the basement. And I think this is exactly what Achieve wants. They want to have that complete freedom for the sledge of Dunny to just keep on breaking absolutely everything open because of the freedom that a hole in the floor can give the attackers.
And this vertical down, minute 40 on the board, is nothing to be all that worried about here for Achieve. A Nitro Cell gets tossed, you could maybe worry about that, but thankfully I believe Dunny heard the Velcro get ripped, so he falls back at a perfect moment to keep himself alive and still apply tons of pressure in the back of Arsenal. Whether they get somebody in the back of blue or they get somebody in dirt tunnel, that could be a very easy way to have more or less a multi-approach, leading in through that back plant, leading in the B bomb site, and now getting ready to drone out through main stairs as well. This is a fantastic place for Achieve to be for the final minute, having this multi-attempt being established so far, and also getting someone down through blue as well. I believe the Zofia of Melo is trying to drone that out as well. This is a phenomenal place to be for Achieve right now.
1 minute to go. I like this. They have the ability to pinch out, but if SYR can stop this push, if they just choose and are able to properly identify where the bulk of the push is coming from and direct their attention towards it at the right time, that could make a massive difference, especially considering that at this current state, Achieve does not have eyes on for any of the defenders. So if they push looking in the wrong direction, that could smell absolute doom. Pushing with the pistol will be Badger, sprinting to HPR now to find that opening kill. C4 will be detonated from the mirror of Vazdex, but with that, the plant from Stu will almost be successful with 2 seconds. HPR looking to deny it. He'll be able to deny it successfully. That's a second one. Also a frag from Vazdex, make that a third for HPR, but a quick cleanup from Eric. They'll find 2 with seconds. They have to find both of the remaining SAS operators. Swinging around, it will be HPR to find the 4K and effectively shut down every single bit of that push from Achieved.
And the smokes really not meeting their mark, I suppose, for Badger. He probably expected almost perfect coverage by them, and also his teammate watching above with the vertical pressure on the hatch, but neither one of those things really helping Badger in terms of actually getting that plant down. He instantly died. Then we had somebody else sort of drop down to go for that plant as well, and that failed miserably too, by both the toxic canisters and also HPR just getting aggressive on the mute play. And at that point, really everything just fell apart there for Achieve Esports, really only having the blue stairs maybe, and also main stairs themselves to really go off of. And I think even their blue player died as well, which is why the back part of Arsenal was such a stronghold there for SYR Esports. Slowly breaking that gap now. I believe we're heading all the way back to the top floor this time about, heading into church, or yeah, not church, sorry, CCTV, the other C-word bomb site, my mistake. Heading into CCTV and cash room. We've got a fairly similar lineup as to what we saw last time this was in play, but by Achieve Esports, still having that dock for Raptors, I would assume, and then still having plenty of anti-breach of both the Kaid claws and also the mute jammers too.
Interestingly enough, on this defensing side of CC, is Vazdex on the dock? Is there a meta switch fellow that I completely missed? Or
no, he's not super meta, but I know like the purpose of having Vazdex on dock. That's just to to hold Raptors and just be a juggernaut. That's what I would assume at least.
I would hope so. I think almost every single time we do actually see a dock, you don't actually see them going for any crazy pick. Funny enough, having a dock on the board does actually mean that the res meta or the reset meta that we saw, where you can actually down your teammate and pick them up with the stim shot, will actually bring them all the way up to 75 health, unless that was changed a while ago. But very, very powerful, and a great use of that exothermic charge above the mute jammer will open up the entirety of CC at the 2-minute and 20 mark. So great use of time so far from Achieve, and it's just going to be a matter of how well and how proficiently they can clear out the players in both Garage as well as CC.
Swift almost gets his head ripped off by Dunny holding a very passive angle in the middle of basically the main area, I guess, the main part of the outside near motorcycle. So we already have a tad bit of damage being done favoring Achieve, and they do have a couple of kill holes to add some extra pressure onto Raptors, which is most likely their main point of contention. And finally, Swifted will try to re-peek, this time against Mello, and he'll get punished for that. Achieve now having that first official gunfight as a victory. Now they can begin to put almost all of their attention onto trying to clear out Raptors, and once that is established in their back pocket as a part of the map they now can walk through, they can go for a very default plant, and only having to worry about a handful of nitro cells and those toxic canisters, it's not going to be that big of an issue for Achieve so long as they can just find some sort of other pick, or at least force SYR to completely fall back in these next 20 seconds.
Different breaching charges being thrown out as Salma onto the garage wall will be able to do a little bit of damage to Vazdex, but they still have the wall to play and swinging around Stews to find the head, and that's a big relief, or a sigh of relief on the side of Achieve, because that means that they are now finally able to work their way in towards Garage. If you're a fan of SYR, then that means that they have to really slow down. They have to really try to delay as much time as possible, as Badger will almost definitely be going for this default plant, and with nobody down below for that C4, that could make the difference in the round.
I mean, theoretically, if they could clear out red, he could maybe plant much closer to the plat wall to stop any denial towards default. With the way that SYR and Achieve are currently set up, that would be incredibly challenging, so he'll most likely go for the default plant like he is right now. And no nitro cells being tossed and no smoke grenade either. Very questionable indeed. Badger got the plant down for free and works for a pick as well. A flawless round achieved by Achieve Esports, no pun intended there, as despite the fact we had everything as an option to stop a plant from going down next to default, none of it was utilized by SYR. Very questionable indeed.
I'm a little bit taken back from that. I'm not gonna lie to you, fellow, where it seemed like SYR had such a good hold on the site, but it was just a matter of them being able to properly hold within that utility. And that's not to take away from just the sheer magnitude of Achieve's push. They got the wall open early on, then Badger rotated to assist within Garage. They had clear intention to go for that default, especially once we saw Stews really throw that Selma breaching round onto Garage. You can see, and I think that's something that should have been called out on the side of SYR. But once again, interesting operator selection on the defensive end, as they're going to be reattempting CC, except this time with the two interesting operators of Tachanka as well as Warden.
Now, I don't hate this at all. We have seen smoke grenades as an option for Achieve Esports, especially on their thermite player of Badger. So that I don't hate, and also having another nitro cell. It's just a matter of if they're going to be able to utilize what they bring to the table, because last round we saw 2 nitro cells and all 3 smokes on the board for SYR, and none of it was used to stop the plant from going down. If SYR Esports are once again in a position where they cannot comfortably fall back with that util in mind, then things are going to be problematic once again for them, and there's a strong chance we see series point once again for Achieve Esports, just this time on Clubhouse, of course.
I think the second time in this case would be the charm that Achieved should, if they get to that map point or match and series point after this round, it's almost a matter of time, because since SYR's on the defending end, once they win a site, they have to go to a different one that they're probably not as comfortable on. Now Stu to find Vazdex on that. Okay, you know what? We're going to call it a crash, but regardless, they have the opening pick. And Achieve has the ability to push up. They have the man advantage, and they have one less player to worry about, that is Vazdex. They have a clear ability to clear things out. And regardless, they can make this work.
But having your main Raptors player already dead is not a good sign at all for SYR. They have Rapid kind of, great shot by Eric. As I was saying, they have Rapid playing underneath an oil pit, which could maybe catch one person off guard. But after their ruse is snuffed out, then there isn't much else for SYR to really fall back on besides that site presence once again, which didn't do all that much last round because their util was never actually on any active position. We had a nade almost kill the smoke of HPR, but thankfully he's going to live that altercation. Dunny still has another in his pocket, so if he expects HPR to still be inside of cash room in a position where he could die, he can maybe throw out that grenade, force things into a 5-on-2, and then it'll be the retake game by both Rapid and somebody else. And like as I called, Rapid may find one, but it's a quick refrag, and now we're in a 4 versus 2 with only the smoke and the Chaka left to stand, Banks.
These are 2 denial operators, which means they do have a better chance of being able to deny. That Shumika launcher buffed a few times, but now sitting quite comfortably. However, it's hard to know where to shoot or deny when you have a smoke blocking your line of sight. However, that won't stop pre-made throws or lineups made by HPR for denying. But with no one actually going for the plant, all of this utility is basically used in vain, unfortunately. Fire will bounce back, luckily not letting up his teammate of HPR, as none of these are lining up as Stews to find Naj, and is all left up to HPR, who's down on red stairs. Not spotted out by Stews with the push up, Mellow killing Badger, and HPR now in a very winnable situation, but nope, there's Dunny. And we're going to see a match and series point for Achieved.
This time, not having things down to the wire, it'll be 3 rounds required by SYR to, at the very least, guarantee overtime. It definitely seems like they are not able to get a good read on their opponents at all, trying CCTV for a second time, and it's still completely backfiring. They'll now opt for the other top floor site of gym and bedroom, and then if they win this one, they'll probably go back to the basement floor. Still, though, not a very promising sight to see at all, and thankfully they have the mirror, but I feel like their general default holds have just completely fallen flat, and really it's just been Achieved kind of outgunning their opponents and still getting enough heart destruction down to have those openings just to waltz into sight and try to go for that plant. We saw that a lot last round when they were going for CCTV. They had no struggle clearing out rafters off the bat, getting the plat wall opened up, and then all they had to deal with was just the cash and red room presence, which was again kept at a very safe distance to allow that execute to unfold and to see that plant begin to be attempted, or at least people just running into sight to kill the last person.
Philo, I want your take on this. If we were to see SYR focus more towards choosing a spot on the map that they're going to hold down with complete certainty rather than the extensions that we've seen from, for example, Vazdex pushing out, how do you think we could see a switch in the way Achieve is attacking? I know that we can easily assume that Achieve will still go for their same methodical push, but do you believe that they are going to be pushing in a sense that allows them to still use that utility, or is it going to be more focused on the frags if they were all situated in the same spot?
Well, for SYR Esports, they haven't been really overtly trying to go for those extensions all that much. They've been doing more or less light lurks. This is probably the only round we have seen them extend heavily into somewhere, being CCTV and cash room. And I was going to say maybe having more aggression perhaps could be a better option. At least Vazdex will prove that for now. Dunny is already gone, but that's probably one of the more difficult players, or operators I should say, to use when attacking a site such as gym and bedroom. Of course, you have those grenades where you could throw out underneath because the flooring is of course soft, but besides that, Dunny really serves no purpose with the sledgehammer, so it's not that big of a concern by Achieve Esports, besides the fact that they have just lost another gun that could have been very valuable, at least in terms of that man count.
Eric taking massive amounts of damage. It will be Vazdex to collect onto his second kill of the round. They don't want to let this game get out of their control just yet. However, there is still 1:55 remaining, so just under 2 minutes, and that gives a lot of time for Achieve to really rotating around and figure out what the plan is. Mellow to catch Swifted on the flank attempt through construction hatch. So they're relegated to the bench, possibly for the rest of this match. But now the clear for Mellow has to account for the Malusi of Rapid sitting in garage, but I don't believe that they were spotted out. So if they are able to vault in undetected, this could be a huge flank. Swing around, Stu, right at the right time. Able to catch Rapid, and highly unfortunate. That allows Mellow to continue with their push right on in towards construction. And that's Vazdex now down on the floor. Naj and HPR, the remaining 2 defenders.
SYR Esports just over swinging far too many positions, and now it's cost on the advantage they most certainly earned, at least Vazdex earned for his team in the first minute of that round. And now Achieve Esports, like you had mentioned, they have a strong chance of sending us home in this best-of-3 series. Mello with another one leaves just HPR, the sole survivor, in these last 50 seconds, having to win 3 separate gunfights. Mello and Stews are low, and Stews gets caught in a bear trap. So now 1 versus 2 essentially, but HPR still needs to win these gunfights, and with only that SMG and shotgun, unless he closes the gap here, this could be very difficult. He hears the vault of 1, and now a second. Mello gets finished off, now 1 versus 1, unless Badger can get that revive. HPR going underneath, trying to find that Nitro Cell pick, but he has no idea where that Frostmat actually could have been. There goes the C4, detonates at the right time, finds 1, but Stews can land on top of the bed, and that C4 does no damage to him. Now going for the plant, 18 seconds left. HPR works his way up to the top of main sterile, but that plant will in fact go down. But Stews has to be ready for this first gunfight, but he gets to hop out the window. HPR does not react in time, and now he can just sit outside and look pretty for these next 30 seconds, and just all he has to do is make sure no one goes for some sort of cheeky run out. HPR will attempt that though, and it doesn't look like Stews was prepared for that. HPR, a big 3K to keep his team alive, and it looks like we're not heading out of this best of 3 just yet, Binks.
That is absolutely massive from HPR. Their ability to really maneuver around the site and the information from the Frost to be able to know that there was a downed player. Now, questionable to go for the revive, especially when you know they were so close, but they got it off. And I think that's the important part. And it was just unfortunate on the side of Achieve that it did connect onto the player that went for the res, leaving the ace alive with such little health. Now for SYR, they are now 1 round down within that perfect rotation. Church and Arsenal will be the next site that they are opting to go for on this defensive end. And if they are able to get this, they go to CC, a site that they notoriously have had trouble with. But that's thinking too far into the future, fellow. We have to focus right here, right now, which is Church and Arsenal for SYR. Can they get it done?
There's definitely potential to have that happen. We have only seen them go here once, but it ended up being a victory because they were able to stop most of the light extensions that were happening inside of Blue, and they also completely stopped a plan from being attended by Badger because the smoke grenades were not tossed in a good position to provide ample cover, and actually probably backfired as well, not having his teammates be able to properly see anybody that was trying to engage on the thermite planting. So there were a ton of problems for Achieve when they were trying to go for this bottom floor execute, and I think the big thing out of all of it was just their last second coordination and really trying to wait for that perfect moment, and it took far too long. They did a great job of clearing out the top and bottom floor and getting vertical pressure because there was no road game, of course. So that was a very fast and efficient clear. But once they had to actually go into the belly of the beast, that's where we started to see the degrade by Achieve, and overall just really showing their true issues that they've had as a team so far this best of 3.
Do you think that if they rotated and went for more of a more gym-oriented planter push, that could have really shifted, where they said, all right, so we can push into bedroom, but we still have the option to push into a farther site to have more of a substantial clear? Do you think that could have made an essential difference within the round, and ultimately meant that we're not even having this conversation because the match would be over?
Potentially, but you still would have had to have worried about the frost mats, so I'm not too sure. And you could still go for a nitro cell kill as well, as long as you have the info there. Still would have been a very similar situation, probably a 1v1. But we need to focus on the now, of course, like you had mentioned. Looks like Achieve Esports just doing their due diligence on the drone game. They're going to figure out nobody's here on this top floor and probably assume the same thing on the middle floor, and then they'll begin to get the vertical down at a pretty good time frame. I think Dunny has already utilized his hammer a couple of times, and yeah, I think he's already at least getting the walls opened up leading into lobby through the side of garage. So it's only a matter of time before he just works his way inside the kitchen, gets his hammer down once again, and just starts opening up a bunch of kill holes for his team to utilize, and also help his teammates get the hatch open, of course, inside the kitchen.
Yeah, interesting to see this breaching hammer used, and I think if anyone's going to be able to use that breaching hammer until it doesn't work anymore, it is going to be Dunny. However, Mellow to find the first kill, and it's going to be Rapid to fall. Interesting enough, that's your mute player. No more C4, and it does free up a lot of area to push within blue. Meanwhile, the second floor push from Achieve is well underway, with Maverick looking to get the hatch. You have the Ace using their breaching charges to be able to get over onto Kitchen. But interesting enough, fellow, there still has not been any sort of C4 detonated on the side of SYR. They're really taking their time and pushing up, as Naj is actually the one that's taking over and holding on to construction. Not construction, tunnel. Not the usual push that you're expecting.
Over the flashbangs forces Vazdex back for a little while. No grenade though to follow up. They're actually taking their time once again. Very good patience so far by Achieve. They still have 40 seconds, so it's not that big of a concern. The Nitro Cell could have been an issue, but it connects onto the wall instead and doesn't really meet its mark in the slightest. So Batcher will still remain alive, although I think he would have been far away enough, even if that C4 landed into main. 30 seconds still remain, and we're just about ready to have this push unfold. Vazdex getting incredibly aggressive. No one to refrag Eric just yet, and we still have this mirror holding strong in the last 20 seconds, Binks.
Yeah, mirrors are extremely powerful when you have to get that information as well as know the timing of when to switch. Meanwhile, Dunny able to find HPR as well as Badger to find a kill onto Swifted. It's going to come down to Vazdex as well as Naj. Meanwhile, Vazdex falls with a double kill from Badger. That gives them time to go for the plant with 5 seconds. Naj just has to deny this. He'll rotate around by basement hallway right below default camera. Looking for the hole. Plant will now be successful. That's no longer an option. He's going to get the 2 kills, but no, Badger with the 3K. To finish it off is Achieved. We'll take it in 3.
Really glad as well we had a change of heart by Achieve as well. They understood the problems that they had the last time playing against that basement site, and instead of going for the exact same idea, they instead rotated down in through Moto and main and went for a church play instead, while still having that pressure established inside of blue as well. That was a much better attempt by Achieve to not get close to 12 rounds of regulation, then going in overtime. Instead, they end things out 7-4, and off of a very good play as well. Despite the fact they still had a couple examples where they were still isolating some of their teammates, it didn't matter because they still won the gunfights required to get that execute down and dusted, and even have the plant go down in a relatively timely manner, considering the fact that they did end up having to push in the last 20 seconds.
But regardless, that is going to do it for both Fellow as well as myself, Binks. If you guys want to follow us on Twitter, you have Fellow the Caster as well as Binks Cast. We always appreciate it. And of course, production has been powered by Northern Arena. And thank you to both our sponsors of Waves Gaming as well as Parabellum Esports. It's always an absolute pleasure knowing that we have you guys supporting us, and it really helps us here at CCL. But regardless, that does it for us. Achieve Esports taking this first game. Don't go anywhere though. We have a short break before we're back with our second matchup of the day.
The tides will turn without us, and I'll be killing time like I might be a cartoon. Take it in.